Having a quorum, I'd like to open the Architectural Board of Review for November 30th, 2009, starting with general business public comment. Anyone in the audience who would like to have a say before the board on anything that's not on the agenda? No? Seeing no one, I'll close that portion and bring it back to approval of the Architectural Board of Review minutes for November 16th, 2009. Can I have a motion to open that?
I'll make a motion.
By Paul, second by Chris. Okay, anything before item 1 in general business? Item 1. Item 2.
Mr. Chair, I have 2 comments.
Paul?
On item 3, where it says study the lighting at the stairwell in the basement to maximize natural lighting and natural venting capabilities.
All right.
To add the word natural twice.
Okay.
And then on item 7 where it says study the bottom of the ramp at the curve into the parking garage for additional embellishment. Let's change the word of to into.
Very good. Okay. Anything else on item 2? Item 3? Item 4? 5? 6? 7? All right. So all those in favor of the minutes as reviewed, say aye. Aye. Against?
Mr. Chair, I abstain.
1 2 abstentions. 3 abstentions. Uh-oh. It's okay? All right. So motion to open the consent minutes. The motion carries, right? Is that it? Oh, a new motion for consent. Oh, yeah.
This is a different date.
Yes. So, motion to open consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
By first by Paul, second by Carol. Go ahead.
This is for today, Monday, November 30th. Item A, 336 Anacapa Street, preliminary and final approval as submitted. Item B, 30 South Quarantina Street, continued indefinitely with positive comments. Item C, 604 East Ortega Street, final approval as noted of landscaping. Items were reviewed by Gary Mosel and Carol Gross.
Thank you. All those in favor of the minutes as read, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Do we have... That's it? Okay. So, consent review. Announcements for continuances, withdrawals, future agenda items, appeals. No announcements? No?
Yes, I have a couple announcements. We have as an appeal hearing on Tuesday, December 8th for the item 617 Bradbury Avenue. We need an ABR member to volunteer their time to attend that council meeting. Somebody that was in support of the motion.
And
That was
what do we
a
have on the minutes?
Can't make it that day.
Okay with that?
next Tuesday, December 8th.
I was at the last meeting, but I can't make that date.
So Chris will
Thank you,
attend.
Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Mr. Chair, if I could add a little bit, expand on that issue, because I believe that decision was pretty split. It wasn't was it 4-2? 4-2 vote. And there are times when we do have a minority representative representing the minority opinion, and I wanted to comment a little bit about that.
Okay.
That I think if a particular board member feels strongly about the project and wants to be in attendance, that we just be advised of that attendance, so we can clearly indicate to the Planning Commission that there will be 2 representatives of the ABR, 1 in favor of the proposal, 1 against the proposal, as well as any board member can show up to the Planning Commission as an individual and speak to it. And again, we would just like the board members to clarify that either they're as a representative of the ABR explaining your position with respect to the decision, or you're actually representing just yourself as a citizen, and make that distinction when you attend.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have one board member is attending already. If anyone else wants to attend, they could follow the procedure. Okay.
I have one question
Dawn?
that would fall under announcements, and that is, are we meeting on the 7th, and then that would be it till the end of the year?
I think we have one meeting.
2 weeks is the December 14th meeting, and that is a
That's it.
normal scheduled meeting. The December 28th meeting is canceled due to the mandatory furloughs.
Oh, right. December 14th will be the one we meet. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Subcommittee report. Sorry?
Another announcement.
Yep.
This was in USA Today on Friday, November 20th. I don't know how many of the board members saw this, but they talk about 10 great places to wait before boarding a plane, and one of them is Santa Barbara Airport. And we are in the neighborhood of, what does it say, Miami, Shanghai, Dallas, Fort Worth, Munich, Santa Barbara Airport, Amsterdam, and JFK, and Heathrow. And they talk about our outdoor coffee shop. It's a wonderful place to wait for planes.
We have an outdoor coffee
Very
shop?
interesting.
On the second floor.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I'm wondering if they're aware of our remodel that's about to take place.
With unbelievable views of the Pacific. It's a very soothing way to wait out a flight. Okay, thanks, Paul. Great.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I wanted to just mention to the board that if you recall NextG application
Yes.
for their sites around the city, they have requested a legal opinion regarding the comments that were received from our design review boards with respect to aesthetics, and the city attorney has prepared one, is basically directed staff to try to work out a solution. So one of the first steps was to ask staff to go out and visit all 52 sites to take a good look at what the impacts would be visually. But one of the directions was to try to sit down with one of the board members to see if we could sit down and see if there are some solutions. The city attorney will be here in 2 weeks to give you a feedback on his interpretation of federal laws and how our local ordinances apply to the project. So in the meantime, I'm requesting some assistance to go over those sites, so when we come back, we could at least have some report given on what those site visits revealed, and or whether or not your current position on the matter would remain or be altered based on those discussions. So, Mr. Chair, I was hoping maybe I could work with you so you can report back to the board.
I will work with you. I mean,
So that'll be our discussion item in 2 weeks. You'll hear more about that.
okay. Thanks very much. So I'll represent the board on that. Okay, subcommittee reports. Any subcommittee reports? Lighting? Seeing none, I'll close that item and start with the first item of the meeting, 1150 San Roque Road. Concept review, 3:15. We have 5 minutes early. Public hearing. Can we start? Okay. So we'd like to start with 1150 San Roque Road, please. State your name for the record and proceed.
Okay, well, I'm Joe Wilcox with KBZ Architects.
Jim Meyerhofer with Corollo Engineers.
I'm Kathy Taylor with the City of Santa Barbara.
So this is our package, our concept review for some basically utilitarian buildings up at Cater Water Treatment Plant. And I'll go right to the site plan first. I think everybody knows basically where it is. And Jim and Kathy interrupt me at any time. These are just photographs of the neighboring areas. Right down here in this corner, we have an ozone contactor, which is basically a large swimming pool with a required elevation for all the engineering science to work, and that's why Jim is here. And then a support building, it's all attached for all the equipment. We have a LOX, liquid oxygen tank here that has a wall around it. They're going to be redesigning the parking lot because we've lost some spaces here to add 6 spaces over here. A new chemical feed building here, an electrical building with, again, a storage tank. And then, Jim, this is a dewatering system building. When we go through the elevations, you'll see that we took this building and we tried to make it look very similar to this building that was here, this existing building, and this building as well. And this building, we've kind of done something unique to try to get the scale down. Keep going. Okay, as I said earlier, this is basically a large water tank called the ozone contactor. There's an ozone destruct room, an electrical room, and a generator room. We had to have access down here for a truck to get to this equipment, and we have a pedestrian door, and we have all the ramps worked out as well. We have a landscape architect that has just now come on board, and he has some suggestions when we come in for the next review. And I also have some photo simulations of this building to show you if you'd like to see them at the end. So we've kind of doctored it up so it would look more like a building with arches and tile roof and so on. Some wrought iron detail here on this elevation, which is facing the east. This is the ozone contactor, this is the big water tank, and this is the driving force, is this elevation of 511, which is this water surface that has to be maintained in order for this to all work with the existing plant.
Correct.
Okay. This is the view from the front, and again, like I said, I have a photo sim of this that I can bring out anytime you want. This is the side that faces, this is the west side that faces the facility. This is the side that faces the north, that faces the parking lot. This is the overhead door, the pedestrian door, and some more doors at this area, and this will have a tile roof with a flat portion with some skylights. So it can be naturally lit. Sections of this building, again, here's the ozone contactor, here's the level of the water that's required. Here's the overhead door, and we've changed this to a sectional door. Now it's not a coiling door. Here's a section through the tile roof section that has a skylight for the generation building, or room. Am I going okay? Keep going. This is the building, let's see, this is the dewatering system building I mentioned earlier. This is basically designed to match their existing large building that runs longitudinal north-south on the site. It's a big equipment building. So I don't even believe it's conditioned, this one. I could be wrong about that. Okay? And then the last building, which is up in the northeast corner, right next to the storage tank building, is this building here again, trying to match. There's a photograph here. They have an existing little shed building on site. Yeah, we try to take it a little bit further than the painted brick. And there's another building. So we just sort of matched that. And again, we have an overhead sectional door, which would be wood. And Jim, this has the chemical feed and the CO2 tank here. This is a photograph of their existing building that's up towards the front. It has the porch. We're not touching that building, correct. I didn't have a photograph of the one building, but I do have this elevation of when I was talking about the one building prior to this one, we're matching this existing design, which is back in the middle of the site if you look at the site plan.
Can we see that photo, sir?
Sure. Yeah, this is probably the building that will get the most visual attraction. And like I said earlier, we just took the photo sim and we set it on the existing site. I think if we do some grading, I think right now I'm looking at this upside down, there's kind of a pocket here I'd like to raise up And once we got David Black, who did the existing landscaping, once we get him to add some trees and stuff, it'd be as such. I think the most impressive view is coming down the road is this, as you're coming down the street. So again, this is basically a large water structure that has to have that elevation. And if you look back at the elevations, you can see how we've tried to tie it in with the existing architecture as best as we can.
So if I'm right, in your previous drawings you showed that there's a flat roof up here and there's about 2'6" parapet. Is that
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, let's take a look at the section that we have there.
it? Yes.
There'll be no mechanical equipment on that roof. There it is right there. What does that say?
21 feet.
No, right here. 513 to 516. 30 inches.
Yeah. Okay.
This part right here.
Okay, so that's the grade we're seeing here. And that's that line right here.
That's the elevation now.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and just one last, yeah. Let's just look at the overall site plan. That's that building
That's
there,
the-
extra parking. That's that long structure with the tank inside.
Well, it's one here as well.
One here.
The
and
one that we
that's-
drew up is this one.
Okay. And that's a new structure also.
Right. And that was the last building you looked at in
Right.
this set. And then this is the one that matches this building right here, which I showed you the elevations of.
Right, and he's more tucked inside.
And he's way up here, yeah, because the street's down here.
And the existing building that's going to remain is this one here
Right.
and this one here.
Yeah.
And that's where we saw that parking in front there.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to,
Mr. Chair, real quick, there was a comment about a mod needing for parking modification, if they can touch base on that. Is there?
About the mod for parking?
We're not losing parking on site.
Right.
I was reading the notes that were written here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm
Mr.
back.
Chair?
We've replaced what we...
Yes.
I can answer that. From a zoning perspective, they're adding approximately 12,000 square feet, more or less, and that does need to be parked for per zoning. That this is in a 30-day development review, and at this point, it's determined that a parking modification will be required because they're not providing parking for that new 12,000 square footage. However, given the fact that this is a water treatment plant and the use, I mean, there may be some more development in the 30-day review. But at this time for the notice, we are saying that it needs a parking modification because that is 12,000 plus or minus square footage of new square feet.
Okay, so the issue may or may not come back to us after the 30-day review. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, first I'd like to open it up to public comment. Anyone from the public would like to comment? You know what, bring that back.
But we have a
Staff?
letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Thanks very much. And then I'd bring it back to the board for questions. Keith? Gary?
Couple of questions. One is, how far from the trailhead is the new building proposed, the new CO2 building? There's a trailhead that comes off pretty close to that end of the parking lot. Is that correct?
Right. How far is it? I don't know. The new building, this building here you're talking about?
We have it going right on the edge of the property line, and I believe the trailhead's close to that.
Right there.
Okay, and
Sorry, I can't tell you.
okay,
And
and
here's the trailhead.
okay, and then how often will they be where will they be refueling, and how often will the CO2 be refueling at that spot?
What site plan?
Yeah, no, I need your. Currently, this facility, this current existing facility is where other chemicals are stored and filled. And the current method is trucks back down right here and fill. There's fill stations that they fill up. The intent was to the same delivery. This is the same location. It would fill the CO2. Would use the same location that we currently add chemicals. The frequency, I don't know. Sorry.
Okay. And I don't know that this isn't really pertinent, but is ozone currently an acceptable sanitation for water, or is this something for future?
Ozone is used quite a bit in the water treatment industry.
Okay.
Is it okay? Dawn?
Just one, and that is there were some photos in the packet that were of, in particular, 4 or 5 different residences, and I was wondering why you included these residences in your photo package.
I just went up there on a Friday afternoon and drove up to the top and started driving down and started shooting because we were in a mad dash to get it in the following minute.
Oh, I see. I see.
Here's the keys for all the
The
photos.
keys for the photos. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are just houses that are.
Yeah, they were just the
So
way.
7 and 8 are taken looking
As you're driving down,
at
you see
that
the roof
house.
of it.
Yeah.
And all of the buildings that you're proposing are
Right in here and right on the corner.
right
there.
in here with no houses
No
directly
houses,
within
right.
view. And then they're all down below. This is
Correct.
the highest.
That is the closest house,
closest house.
to this south part of the property, yes.
Okay.
And then I took some shots across here and you see some houses over in the hill, but they're way up over in here.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Paul?
Mr. Chair, 2 questions. One is the flat part of the roof. What color would you
Be proposing at this time, or do you not know, or what color is the existing flat roof buildings?
Well, since it's not a conditioned space, on the flat part of the ozone contactor, I think we should have something that's an earth tone or green to go away.
Darker
People from
color.
above, I don't think we need to worry about reflective surface since we aren't heating or cooling the space.
Okay.
It's not a heated water tank. Yeah.
And then the second question, where this building is where you did the photo sim, is there a concern about pushing dirt against the building here and actually berming up against the side? Would there be a concern?
No, in fact, one of the engineers' concerned is how are we going to finish this building so there isn't any leakage through the plaster and ruining plaster. I'm actually going to propose that we hat channel the whole building and have a plaster surface with an airspace between, so if the building starts leaking water, it doesn't affect the plaster. Actually, when I saw the photo sim, which was just finished, I would like to see us grade up a little bit and get the landscape architect involved. And I'd almost like to see a terrace, maybe a small retaining wall when we come back. Because I think since we just kind of put it right in there, right on the floor elevation that was given to us by the engineers, I think it looks a little bit floaty. And there's that one dip that I'd really like to fix.
Okay, thank you.
Carol?
Well, that was actually my.
Pause that image back. I have to put the image in front.
Do you want the image here? That was actually my question. Is
I have some more here.
okay. Is that it appears, you know, you have a slope land and you're putting a flat building that needs to be flat because of the usage that you have inside, and it just seemed to me that was, you know, counter thinking. I mean, if you need to get that tank, if you need to get this tank to be absolutely flat, why would you then position your building so you're actually on a slope? It seems like the engineering involved in that is counterintuitive. You would go this way with your flat tank and put the building this way. So I'm
Yeah, when I first got involved, I actually took this section and I dropped it way down. And then the engineer said, you can't do that because of the water elevation. So then I talked to them about, let's rotate this 90 degrees
right.
so that it was here and then step down. But because of the engineering, and that's why Jim's here, this is, I don't know how many studies you've done as to where this building can go, but you might want to discuss that issue, Jim.
Yeah. Very simply, there's some existing buried piping that feeds water to the plant, and we need to keep the existing piping in place because there's some reliability features associated with that. And in doing so, we need to have it a certain distance away from the ozone, the contactor portion of it. And we also have a very large buried clear well. That's what you see right here. And there is, we were trying to keep the large facility, most of it away from the clear well. That's one of the reasons why we didn't initially bring it over here. We also, there's a fair amount of mechanical equipment in here that needs access. And in terms of situating the contactor with the existing infrastructure, once again, the buried pipeline, and getting the piping back, so we have piping coming to here and coming back, we needed some kind of straight run length to get to that point. And in terms of getting access to the equipment in here, this came from the best perspective on how to lay out the facility.
Okay, well, let me ask you the question then. Since this height of this building, this cube, is really about the tank that's inside, right?
It is a tank. It's basically a big swimming pool.
Tank. So why? Because why then not turn it this way? Because you've got your long run with your grade, and then you're dropping the lower building on the corner here. I mean, is there any reason why you couldn't rotate it like that or reconfigure it like that?
We certainly can look. We certainly can look at that. We did, once again, without getting too technical. There's a pressure reducing state, which is termed a pressure reducing station, some piping in here. So we needed to get piping to and back. And in terms of just the layout of that piping, and this is large piping. This is 48-inch and 72-inch diameter piping. So this, from an engineering perspective, laid out best where this contactor was for the conveying the water from here to there and back to the plant. And the reason the height is fixed is we use gravity to feed the water to the plant, and there is an existing water surface elevation in the facility right here, and so we have to match this elevation from a water source so we don't have to build a pump station to convey the water. But we certainly
Okay.
could look at doing that.
So on your elevation of that building, in the south, the east, the west, no, the east elevation. So these grades really aren't representative. I mean, the land is much more dippy. I mean, if I'm reading this correctly, so grades are going down or up here?
This is basically like a water flow and going up here and then back up here. So.
Okay, because when you look at from here to here, these grade marks aren't really represented on that elevation because this is relatively flat and then it's very steep.
Well, look at the photosim, though. It's not quite that steep. I mean, the photosim is much more, it's an actual photograph of the site. And this is where that dip is that I was talking about. I think the elevations, I know we took them directly off the silver drawings. Where's the front?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Chris?
It just seems kind of unfortunate to me that the building has to end up right there. I mean, I actually go up that road quite a bit, and it has a nice feeling of openness as you drive up and you see the mountains, and that building sort of popping right out, sort of in your face right there is a bit unfortunate. I guess my question is, was there any other opportunity on site anywhere else on the property to locate that? I know it's kind of
We actually developed, I think, close to 10 different alternatives with different site locations. And from a process standpoint, this is the best location for both hydraulics and the chemical delivery. Ozone is not something that gets delivered on site. It's the liquid oxygen, and then you need to generate the ozone on site. And where you generate it and when you apply it to the water, there is a sort of a maximum distance. And so we had to keep those facilities together to be efficient. And once again, the hydraulics sort of drive the water level in this facility. But no, we certainly had this contact. We had the contactor located throughout the site, and from a process standpoint, from a treatment standpoint, this was by far the superior location.
So logistically, it worked best here, but aesthetically, it's not so much. So, okay, that's my question.
Okay, thanks. I guess come at it. I'm pretty well asking the same questions also that the last few members have asked. Is really the location of this structure, and in particular, as Carol was bringing up, in particular the location of the compactor itself in relation to the bigger rectangle, and whether or not it can be flipped, or whether or not there's if it has to be in this location here, is there a difference between it being here versus here, and having the parking come around here more like what's this doing here? So just generally, I'd like to find out some of those questions that you may have asked yourselves in putting it here, and if you could elaborate on that location for us, because obviously the location of it is very sensitive.
I'm sorry. There's a lot of technical reasons, and I'm trying to think about the best way to say it. The main line comes right up through here, and this is a 48-inch pipeline that runs right up the property here.
Coming across the street?
It comes from Laurel Reservoir across the road, and then there's also a line that comes ultimately starts at Kachuma and comes down and ties up. And the treatment plant has the ability to bypass Laurel Reservoir, and that's the flexibility and reliability I was referring to. And so that line needs to stay in place. And then what we do is we tee into that line, and then we need to take that pipeline and run it to a contactor, and we need to have a certain amount of straight run length because we need to add the ozone to the piping. And in order to get that straight run length, and because of the size, it needs so many feet away. And these are all existing facilities for a treatment plant that needs to stay in operation. And if this facility has to be replaced, this is a tremendous amount of work and would require an extended plant shutdown to do. And so to relocate this facility to accommodate this somewhere else is a very daunting and a very expensive proposition. And so this, once again, from an engineering standpoint, we needed so much straight run length to get the piping to the contactor. And conversely, we also needed to get it back because there will be some ozone left in the water, and we need to it'll off gas. We need some ability to capture that and destroy it. And so this isn't as simple. When we looked at other locations, we talked about the contactor. We looked at it up here. We looked at it. Where else? Yeah, across the street.
We looked at rotating it, just like Carol mentioned. That was one of our first suggestions, to try to rotate that.
So that made the difficulty of taking this and putting it right up here, I guess, to specifically address your question.
And you ruled out the rotation also, for the same reason?
We certainly can revisit that one.
Okay.
In terms of keeping it in the same location and rotating, we certainly can revisit that one.
Okay. The other was, the second question was, I'm looking at the other structures on the project. I'm looking at this structure. I'm looking at this one. Looking at this one here. And this is
the same.
These are the same. And, there's a disparity in the architecture. There's sort of just like, that's different to that, that's different to that, that's different to this. This one probably being the most alien to our
No, that's the major building on the site right here.
This one here?
This is the existing building that sits on the site.
Wouldn't have.
Right. Here. Right here.
Okay, so this is orange right now? That's an orange building?
No. This is the photosim.
It's a photosim. The other's a photosim of the same building.
This is the same building coming down the hill. This is a photosim coming up the hill.
Okay. But
This is the what I would call other than this building, which I call the front, this is probably the most dominant building on the site. The other ones are small shed-looking tile roof huts.
So these three exist on the site? This one,
this one,
and that one?
Yeah, I just didn't have photographs of this one.
And what color is that one?
It's white, and this color, this is concept. This color we tried to tweak, and I'm not happy with the color, but that's not the color we're proposing.
Okay.
But not as white as what's out there now. We have all the existing colors. In fact, this is the color schedule right here.
Okay. So essentially, I'm asking really. There's so many different types of architecture and different scaled elements, and I was wondering why we wouldn't try to make the new building that is a little bit more compatible with the other ones that are there. Was there
I think it is.
this one here with
Yeah.
these?
That's really what we took our cues from, was this existing main building, and then we tried to put some roofs on it to give it some kind of scale or some kind of residential feel.
Okay. So I guess the losses is not having a picture of that one.
It's
throwing
similar
me
to
off.
this, other than it's flush. This is outset, with
Yes.
but this is just all flush with a plaster recess, exactly like that.
I think that what Chris
that-
might be talking about is the fact that you have your column to arch break
Yeah.
below the midpoint of the arch, and there's a recess that's it's much more defined on this building.
And it looks like this one facing the public is, if it is that, right? This is that. Then
Right.
this one is more into the street public. This is behind. This is behind that one. So this is not really seen that much. There's a lot of distance in between. There's other buildings.
Correct.
So, to me, I mean, it's a plan. And it's fine if that's back there. And what I'm really trying to protect really are the public's eye. And so I'm looking towards like what the public sees and the cohesion of what they see, that sort of thing. Okay, that's it for questions.
No, I think it's a good point. It was kind of hard for me to put a portico around a water tank. With nobody's going to be walking around this where they are on this building, but we can look at that.
Okay.
And we look at the spring of the arch. That's a good point.
Okay.
In fact, let's
Great.
look at the elevations. To get,
Okay, so I'd like to bring it back to the board for comments now. And Keith?
I guess short of rotating the building 90 degrees clockwise, I think that would be most preferable, just because then you could get the short end of the tall mast facing downhill, as we've all pointed out. If technically that is too big of a can of worms, I guess my thoughts on looking at the photosim here is that one, the color ought to integrate more with the existing buildings, and then two, I'm not sure the little gable end is that successful in kind of breaking up the mass. I think I'd rather just see the kind of portico motif just carried across, and then maybe that's given more depth, and maybe the proportions of those arches are less vertical, so it doesn't accentuate the verticality of the mass. And then lastly, just studying the landscape and perhaps the grades there to try to mitigate or disguise some of the height. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Thanks, Keith. Gary?
Yeah, I too would like to see the building rotated, and if I recall, I do know a little bit about ozone and water treatment. I think it's 5 times the diameter of the pipe from the contact point. So check out your mechanical engineering on that to see if from the point of contact that there is enough room for that. And the destruction can happen. Doesn't have to be the 5 times the diameter. So the destruction can happen closer than that. One thing I noticed is I didn't particularly care for this plant on the outside as well, and I agree with Keith about the verticality of the arches accentuating. I would like to see maybe a single-story element added to it to make it look like maybe 2 stories, and maybe it'll make it look like a libero or something. And the last thing is a minor comment would be the scuppers. I would rather see an interior, rather than those drains go around the corbelling and around this. I would rather see an interior drainage pipe and just the scuppers.
Thanks, Gary. Dawn?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, for me, it's just about, I think what Chris was talking about, and that's picking up on some of the more traditional Spanish detailing instead of, this relief from the column to the face of the building is just a little gratuitous. You were mentioning that in this building you don't walk around it, so you don't need that depth, but you don't walk around these either. This is just 2 feet deep, and this is like 6 inches. So I think the reason that this building is more successful for me is that you really do get a sense of shadow, and it actually does read as a portico, even though it's not. And I think that the full half arch is more successful than this cutting it off farther up. I don't necessarily think that the gable is necessary either. I think that the building could be successful without it. And I really didn't like this little kind of picture frame in that gable. It just didn't make any sense to me. Nor does this wrought iron grating when there's no window behind it. I think it's just a waste of money. I think that the structure being kind of this box housing a water tank could be successful without adding a bunch of things to make it look like it's supposed to be a building when in fact it's not really a building. That's it.
Thanks, Carol. Paul?
Thanks, Don.
All the other comments I agree with, so I'm not going to repeat them all. The 2 comments that weren't made was the parapet height of the water tanks. Since this is the view that we're looking at, we're harping on the most. If you do the interior drains, or you shed the roof down to the lower portion of it and then deal with the drainage that way, you might be able to reduce this parapet by 2 feet, or at least 18 inches, and that'll bring down a little bit of the mass. The second comment would be to earth tones is a good direction to go. It's just the colorization that we see here was not, it's a little bit too orangey, but that can be taken care of in the next round. And comments about the color of the roof and things like that staying in the earth tone make it go away. And that is all.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, so I'm going to point. It's a disadvantage of being all the way over there. I was on AVR years ago when this project first came, and one of the things that was stressed at that time, because this was a big development in this neighborhood, is that the dimensions from the street to any building corner seemed appropriate and consistent with the neighborhood. Now, I'm assuming that you're observing your setback here. You're not encroaching in the front, are you? I'm going to assume you are encroaching in the front setback.
Modification is going to be required. The city's going through a modification on this.
I don't remember that being, but how many feet, though, are you encroaching?
I don't recall this one. This one's right on the property line, so whatever the setback's required.
Okay. Well, usually on drawings we have the setbacks, so we could actually dimension it and see a dimension of what are we talking about.
Okay.
That's kind of basic information for this. All right, well, now I'm going to start off by saying I know that a lot of time and brainstorming has been put into this, but given the impact, the visual impact of something so tall and something so corner-like is coming out into the neighborhood, if this was a house being proposed on just a regular lot, this kind of approach to the building orientation is not acceptable. So, you know, even tilting it this way, getting it closer to the pipes. It doesn't even have to be a 90. It could be a 30 or a 45. That would make a lot of difference. And maybe with that kind of approach, you're not even encroaching into the setback. This, I have to tell you, from all the thoughts that went into how this is blending into the neighborhood and how this is consistent with the neighborhood and the original development, this is something that I can't support this corner. I'm okay with this, I'm okay with this, but I think this is actually a big mistake. I think this is going to have a visual impact that is really going to stick out. And, you know, if this was a single-family residence trying to be proposed like this would be rejected. So something like this. And I do agree with all my colleagues about the architecture, making it match what is existing. And I don't know. I just think the big issue is I can't support this in the front setback, and especially just the way it's designed and angled.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair, let me just make a point of clarification. As this is in the A1, which is a single-family residential zone, and it's a non-residential use, they have to conform to the, they have to double the single-family setbacks. And for this particular, because of the way the road is curved, they're actually encroaching into the front and into the interior. The ordinary front setback for the A1 zone would be 35 feet, but because this is a non-residential use, the setback would have to be 70 feet. And again, for the interior, the A1 single-family zone would be 15 feet, and this would, in that case, would be 30 feet for the setbacks.
What is the current setback for that corner to the road or the corner to the property line?
70.
Well, that's the required for.
But what is the building at?
It looks like it's about 20 feet.
20 feet, 25 feet.
So it's not even 35?
It's close.
20 is close to 35.
No, the building is close to the street. Very close.
Oh, it's close to the street, yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I'm basically in complete agreement with the rest of the comments, and especially Carol's, and I'm glad we found out that was in the front setback. And for me, it's also too close to the road. I know you are limited with where you can put it, but I think it would really affect that neighborhood. And I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Chris. I think the first thing we should do is on the second go-round when you come back, we really need to see where the required setback is so that we know the magnitude of the modification that you're requesting.
Let's put on here. Okay, we had it on there
Yeah,
one time.
but it's good to have it on this site plan so we could actually see how much encroachment there is on both sides. And essentially, I'm thinking that if at all possible, I think that this really should be made to rotate and have the taller element in the back here as much as possible. I think because of what's happening here, the significance of the size of this building, the proximity to the curb, is that you really have to try and minimize the amount of encroachment that is happening here. Now, having said that, you may be finding yourself up against a rock and a hard place, so to speak. And so we need to know where are the limits of what can be done. But at first, I think we would like to see as much as possible this high element back here masked by this in front. And I think what I particularly would like to see is that there's a homogeneity to the style of the buildings on the property, and the amount of articulation, and in many respects, I'm thinking, just as the others have said, the type of plant-on styling. I don't think that it's really needed.
Good.
I think that what you should try to do is become a little bit more honest in the structure. We know it's not a single-family residence, and put the money or the effort in trying to make the structure live in the community a little bit better. And what I mean is that I think that if this were to turn, and a more honest style is here, I think that you have to really pay attention to the topography in front of it, and I would, for one, welcome a sort of either a berming up and maybe having a split level to that terraced up to the building there, so that, and put some more thought or a lot more into the landscaping to the whole front of this area here. And I would much prefer to see that than to see the plant-on bars and these sort of elements that really, in some regards, it looks like the back of a outlet mall or something, and it's really not what we're after. In many regards, if you see this among the trees and it's a water treatment plant and it's back there, it's acceptable, and so find a happy medium in between there. That's what I'm trying to see. But definitely landscaping in here is a really big deal. I think you really have to look at that and look at the topography and how that works. And we're happy to see you back here and solve those problems.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I come to a motion from
I'll make a motion for
Dawn.
definite continuance back to the full board with the following comments: that the applicant to study rotating the structure. 2 would be note the proposed setback from the street frontage. 3, simplify the architecture. 4, study the landscaping and topography. Well, with regards to noting the proposed setback, you could state on there that after note proposed setback, the board has concerns about the proximity and visibility of the structure to the street and the neighboring single-family residences.
Okay, would you have a second and under discussion after? Second by Carol. Under discussion? Carol.
I'd like to see in the project scope each modification requested. So you say, modifications requested 1, 2, 3, and then really put what the dimensions are of what we're talking about. On the title page.
Thanks. Any other items under discussion? No? Okay. Chris?
Just one thing would be to consider stronger language to dissuade this as a location for that building and look at an alternative location, if there is one, on the site.
Emiko?
What kind of stronger language?
Well, I guess to encourage the applicant to consider a different location entirely for the building itself. Sure.
I feel like this, I don't know if Chris does, but this location is not acceptable due to the height and the proximity to the street. And by saying that that's not acceptable, I think that gives the clear message. If there's some way architecturally that they could finesse that, but to me, it is not acceptable because of the proximity and the height together.
Under discussion, I just want to say is that I think what the motion should really say is tell you that we find that this location is a bad location, but they have to make the case that there is not a better or there is not another location that can work, and we put it to them to make the case to us that there is not. What I'm trying to say is, supposing there is not another location that can work in the plan, we have to be able to review something and review it in that light. So,
well, I already mentioned that in the motion that the board has concern with the proximity of the structure to the street and the surrounding neighborhood. I don't feel the same way you do that this is an inappropriate location necessarily. So if the motion doesn't pass, then you can make a different motion. I just would like to know. I think it's kind of deceiving to go through the entire presentation without mentioning that you need a very significant front yard modification for this project. It wasn't really a good way to start out. So, but I'm not to the point where I would say that it's a completely inappropriate location. I agree with Chris that they have to prove that it's the only location and it has to be this big, or it has to be here and it can't be turned. And then we can say that it's inappropriate.
Okay, if I can go ahead, Gary.
Just one, thank you. Just one other thing. We didn't really discuss the other building, the CO2 building, which is 100% in the setback. It's really close to a trailhead where people are going to go to the outdoors, and they're going to be putting a building right at the, in that close proximity. And it has no bearing on that pipe location or anything else. The only thing it has to do is with where the trucks enter. And I don't know if that is, being in the setback is the best location for that building.
Okay.
I have a question. I have just a question for the applicant. Did staff not want us to make comments on the modifications, and that's why they weren't noted the way they're supposed to be noted, the way we always see them noted?
It is noted in the footer as a modification for parking and encroachments into the required front and interior setbacks. And it was noticed that way.
And part of that is my mistake in that I was brought on after this site plan was gone through the 10 versions. I hadn't seen the other versions, so I didn't even think about raising that because the city's been dealing with that whole issue, and I haven't been in the loop on that at all.
Okay. So
Carollo has hired us to do the architecture side of it.
Okay. I
wasn't trying to deceive anybody.
Okay.
Really.
I'd like to make a suggestion to the motion makers. If we can say that on return to the board, the board would like the applicant to make a presentation that there is not a location outside of the required setbacks, and that outside, and that this is the only. Yeah, Keith.
Just make a presentation justifying the proposed location.
Thank
I'm
you,
okay
Keith.
with that. That would go along with with number 2 of my motion.
Okay, but you have to remember that in the presentation that the engineer at the table said that that is a possibility, that he would be happy to study that. And I think that your comment to them, Mr. Chair, is a little misleading. I mean, you're almost not giving the board the, flexibility. So I think it should be where, the applicants, one of the applicants had already stated that they could easily study that. Now, in their study, they could come back and talk to us about the results. But I think the way you phrased that, if I was the applicant, I would say, piece of cake, I'll just come and give you justification, and not really working as what we're supposed to be doing here at the board, which is looking out at the best interest for the community in an aesthetic, way.
Well, I haven't phrased anything in the motion. Keith actually is the only one that's added to the motion right now, in that they have to justify the locations. So as far as what's on the motion.
The first item on the motion was study rotating the structure.
That's perfect. I don't think it should be changed.
Right.
So what was your comment?
I was just trying to help Chris formulate it with stronger language.
Yeah, I mean, I still feel like even rotating the building isn't going to do a whole lot. It is a square building. You will get the taller element to the west, but you still have that in-your-face building as you drive up that road. And without really heavy screening, which would also be imposing, it's going to be a negative visual impact, I think, and a big one.
Would you like to suggest something that's added to Keith's?
Well, I guess I don't think I ever heard.
Keith didn't make the motion. I made the motion.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and I understand, your thoughts, Don. But I never heard from the applicant that there is no other location that would work. I guess that's where I'm having trouble, is that there may very well be a location that could still work. I think there was mention of it being across the street, and I think that would be quite a bit better because it's much lower, for one thing. I don't know what the reason was for not having it across the street. I'm sure there was a good one.
Can you read back, Kathy, my number 2 of my motion, please?
Okay. Note the proposed setback from the structure. The board has serious concerns regarding the proposed project's proximity to the street and surrounding neighborhood. Return with a presentation justifying the proposed location.
I'd like to amend that, if I may, to state that it's not just one structure, it's structures, and also that the part about saying that the board has concerns about the proximity to the front yard setbacks, I would restate that to say that the board has concerns about the proposed modifications regarding the interior and the front yard setbacks for the structures, plural, and the applicant is to, I think, what was the last part of that item, number 2?
To justify.
Justify the locations, or justify the setbacks, both. I think it should say justify the setbacks and the proposed locations.
Seconder? And Chris? Chris? Okay. All those in favor of the motion as read, say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carries. Thanks. Did you wish to say something else?
I just didn't know if Kathy was going to talk about why they didn't go across the street, but
Or we can come back when we do the justification.
That's fine.
That's what you're going to talk about. But we're telling you, you can hear
What's happening?
what's happening here. So I think what Carol and Chris wanted to make sure was that you understood that there are serious concerns.
Right. That's the bottom. Thank you. Well done, John. Okay. Second item of the evening, 130 South Hope Avenue. Oh, we need to take that one. The one that we used for presentation.
We can have those 2 back.
Oh, okay. That one. You can have those. Okay, we're 4 minutes behind schedule. 130 South Hope Avenue. South Hope Avenue? Yes. Thanks for having me out there. I just about fighting my Okay, can you state your name for the record and proceed with your presentation?
Yes, hi, I'm Michael Jones with Sidley Jones Architects. We are the architect for the tenant, and I'd like to preface the discussion regarding the projects and give a little background regarding the tenant. They are a Southern California-based retailer of young miss fashion, specifically young miss. The concept behind right now, basically, they have opened about a dozen stores nationwide. They are continuing to open stores throughout the nation, especially during the Christmas season. And the idea behind their branding is that it's very fashion conscious, which has sort of driven the architecture as well, which if we go now to the proposed improvements to the facade, they typically would like to move towards more of a modern aesthetic. And so we've articulated we've removed part of the existing facade and tried to articulate some of the the new architecture to coincide with
Maybe
their
you can
current
show
tenant.
us.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks. Can you show us where the location is within the mall, this particular
I think
site?
that we need to see the
Right there.
photos, and an explanation of the photos would really help me.
And show us the best thing to do is, okay, this is where it is in the mall, and
Correct.
that's the entry here. And if you can show us the buildings on both sides.
Sure.
On this side and that side.
Okay. Photo 1 is taken basically
This way.
here, inside the court, looking towards the corner. This edge here is this edge. Photo 2 is taken from the entrance from the parking lot, looking back, or excuse me, looking into space.
Two is
looking back.
Two is looking this way. That's 2.
2 is
Yeah, that's
actually,
looking out.
2 is
to the-
looking out this
out to
way.
the park.
This is basically you're here looking back out this corridor area out towards the parking area.
No, this is the
I'm sorry.
little
Yeah.
eatery here. This
Yeah, I
is the
think-
little eatery, and that's the sandwich shop down there, and that's the parking lot in the rail. So 2 is looking this way here.
Correct. That is right. That's standing here looking that way.
Yep.
Kind of hard
I
to
might be
write
able to
down.
see it. Okay. Okay, so that there is the view from
I think
over here.
3 is over here.
right. I think
Looking
that's
back this
here
way.
looking back.
Correct.
Okay.
4 is basically looking from here onto to the space, towards the
Okay.
space.
Right. Right, that's our space right here.
hmm
And you're going to take both half of each? Is that what you're doing here?
Currently, the demising wall on this
Is over
this
here?
demising wall is here, where the new demising wall moves over a little bit.
Okay, so you're pretty well from here to here you're
Correct.
going to be using. Okay. Great. And that's
And this
You recognize that? It's a new guest services building,
yes.
and looking
This is in the rear parking lot in here.
right.
Right?
Correct.
That's okay,
6
that's
is
Williamson.
actually here, looking back towards this way.
No, actually, I think they've
6 is
mislabeled that. It's actually,
on this side.
yeah, 6 is looking here in.
Yeah.
That's the new guest services building. I think
Right
when,
here.
when they compiled it, they got it mixed up. But
Yeah.
that's clear.
This is the rear parking
Right.
lot over here.
Okay.
Okay,
It's a little
and that's
confusing.
along Sears. That's along Sears here, looking towards the front of your
Right, there's the front behind here.
project. Okay, and that's Sears here. Looking this way, it looks like.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And the
that's
two,
entry,
right.
back entry. Okay, thanks. So we know where it is in the mall. We know. Okay, proceed.
This is the existing plan of the space as it is today. Currently, there is a small mezzanine in the back of the space, which landlord is going to take down. It's about, right now, it's currently about 528 square feet. It's going to be removed under a separate permit. And the demolition, the proposed demolition of the specifics of the space would be this facade here, as well as this. Right now, this is a barricade. It's open. Go to the proposed plan. The demising wall moves over, and we are basically proposing popping out to the same extent that the existing storefront is here. However, we would be popping the storefront out beyond what is existing.
There.
I believe the cumulative add is about 120 square feet, 106 square feet that we're adding back. After we've taken the 500 some out of the mezzanine.
Okay. It's composite elevation,
Yes.
straight on elevation.
Here's the existing plan in elevation. Here's the proposed plan and the proposed elevation.
Okay.
Here is a shot of the elevation taken this way.
Okay.
And although the architecture does deviate from the existing We want it to be sympathetic to the center in the sense of the coloration of it, utilizing muted earth tones. The Love Culture's trademark color is a red. What we're proposing is something that's much more earth toned, like a rust or a persimmon, something that falls more in line with the aesthetic of colors of the center.
That's that one.
Right.
Okay. Do you have any elevational work that shows us what's right next to on this side and what's right here in terms of an elevation?
It's under construction.
Yeah, I think there's a barricade.
There's a barricade, and then this
on
is
this
actually
side.
being removed, so I'm not quite sure what new tenant would be going
Right.
there.
Those are vacant spaces with
Okay.
a barricade that we
Okay.
haven't leased those. On the other side is GNC, which is existing, and I think they'll be submitting a remodel to you shortly.
Okay, I guess what we're interested in is how these parapets line up, but we'll take that in questions. Okay, you have is that presentation?
I can address the parapets. I could take you through what's being proposed for that right now, if you like.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Currently, as shown in the picture, there is no parapet at this intrusion piece here until parapets occur further to the north. Right now, however, there is a parapet here and here. This column here is this column. This parapet, there's the line of the parapet beyond.
That parapet goes across here?
No. It dies into the side of the building here.
Oh, that's right. It comes out and goes down this way.
And then there's currently an overhang here along this line that continues along the center of the mall.
Yes.
Now, what we were proposing was to bring the line of the entrance out flush with the overhead of this canopy here,
Yes.
but then return back to this original line. However, from an architectural standpoint, from a design and aesthetic standpoint, it was a bit cumbersome to allow the canopy to continue to run. It was difficult. It was odd looking in how the architecture stopped and started. So we were proposing that we break the canopy and return back on an angle, and then restore the canopy here as well. So there's actually a break in the
right here
overhang itself that gives,
Right.
again, allows the storefront to read as.
So that
an
crown which is this in the existing, that's what I'm meeting right here. And that's the angled portion right here.
Correct.
This is angled right here.
In relief, your canopy would come back down,
Yes.
come over at the neutral pier, and then come over an angle and follow this profile.
Okay. Great. And then this is what's existing, and then this is 22 feet, and this is 23. So is this line right here? See this one here?
This is existing.
So that would be this one here. That would
Correct.
That would come and meet.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Okay, anyone from the public would like to comment? Seeing no one, bring it back to the staff.
There is a letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Thanks very much. Keith, questions on the board?
I was wondering if you could just walk us through the materials.
On the facade.
Sure. Basically, what we're proposing at this point, the entire, all of the specific surface area that isn't glazing would be a steel troweled stucco, a hard steel troweled stucco, without the stipple finish.
Smooth.
Correct.
And the storefront system.
What's the finish on the storefront?
The storefront finish system, we're basically, at this time, we'd like to see it as a millwork aluminum, but we could also basically paint it, which we're proposing the band over the entrance as a darker warm gray. We could match that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Gary?
How would you describe the materials as being traditional materials used in the Santa Barbara area, or per the mall's guidelines?
Well, with it being stucco, the application obviously is probably a different approach, as I'm sure there's probably examples in Santa Barbara of steel trowel, but really there's two main materials in the facade, that being glazing and the solid stucco finish.
Thanks. Thanks, Eric. Dawn?
Is the detail at the top of the parapet just supposed to be a metal?
It's just a coping that would be painted to match.
Oh, painted to match, not representative here, but as a gray necessarily.
No,
it's supposed to
it
just.
should be painted. I mean, I would like to see it painted to match.
And these are. Yeah, like a fry reglet U channel.
Well, this is really just a stucco screed, so it really would just be, if I could, where you have the stucco coming to, so it's really just a line in the stucco.
Oh,
to
it's
break
a
it
line,
up. And
not
then
a reveal.
this is a larger reveal. We're proposing that on the picture window where this corner wraps and has corner glass, that this actually be a reveal that matches the width of the storefront, because there is a structural tube column in this to support this piece here. Otherwise, we really just wanted it to read minimally as a line without being a thick channel.
And where there's something that I'm not quite getting. Okay, that returns. Yeah, it's this connection between the transom window and the storefront below. It hits right in the middle of. This was on purpose, right?
Yes. That's this. The corner you're speaking of is this corner right here.
Right.
This is the red wall.
But as you turn this corner, then you see it again.
Correct.
And then there's a point at which, according to this drawing, they meet very close. But this
This window is occurring here.
And if you follow this drawing here,
this doesn't look like it meets, and it does here on this drawing. That's what I'm trying to understand.
this is either a straight line or it's that band that turns the corner.
Oh,
so
I
you
see
have
what
to
you're
correct.
saying. Right.
There's a discrepancy between what's shown
Okay.
here and what's shown here. I'm just trying to understand which way you want to go with that.
Which way is?
What is really going on? Is this transom supposed to meet at the middle of that
I would
band?
propose that the band, that this band continue at this piece, which is this
Like a
window
line
here.
then. Like that. That's what their proposal is.
Yeah. And then that band comes through and is one straight continuation that breaks up this plaster mass.
Right here. This is the signage. Actually, they're proposing this to be either a brushed metal, or this piece would be illuminated in its entirety, which is here. So the band that you're looking at
It goes.
is
It
right,
follows the building and then comes around the
right
whole
there.
thing.
No, it's here. Because the doors are recessed underneath. There's a.
Oh, this is a whole canopy that protrudes.
This is acting as a canopy. Yes.
So it's not. There's not a break here, and it comes back against the building. This is just a plaster canopy, and that's a metal
It'd be a brake metal band. Yes.
band that comes around. Okay.
And the glass above would be this third story glass above would actually be basically in line with this. We were trying not to create sort of a bird nest area or anything like that.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thanks. Paul? Carol?
So I'm just going to put the guidelines in front here. I need you to sort of explain to me, okay, the first paragraph of the vernacular storefront guidelines. This is from your guideline book, which I'm sure you scrutinized every word in here, the La Cumbre Plaza. Santa Barbara is known for its historic character Spanish Revival architecture. Within La Cumbre Plaza, those architectural forms which have evolved out of the Hispanic Mediterranean tradition will be utilized to maintain and enhance the unique architectural character and special sense of place which the city of Santa Barbara enjoys. And then it goes through 6 things. Let's just, like the brick, the last one, brick, tile, and stone are to be the preferred horizontal surface materials. The next one, ceramic tiles bring a rich decorative texture to a graphic quality. Next one, stucco surfaces are to be treated in a flat manner. The building, etc. In your, could you hand me that sheet that was this one? In this, and I'm getting to my question, somehow someone gave this to you and you fill this out as yes, it complies. But I need you, and my question is, for you to help me understand, because I don't see how this complies, and I want to be on your side in this. So, for instance, portrays the look and feeling of an authentic downtown streetscape in keeping the design goals and character of La Cumbre Plaza. Storefront composition visually anchors the building, establishing a strong connection to the ground and the site, depicts a unique building facade distinct in setting and form, the effect of which enhances a cohesive Main Street. You said all of this complies. Please explain to me, because I just don't see how reading these guidelines.
Well, I think what I'm with Macerich, so actually this compliance form was completed by me. But I think what Mike has done is taken this and try to interpret it as more of a modern interpretation using the materials, the smooth steel trowel stucco, and there are other examples in our center, Louis Vuitton, J. Jill, BCBG, where the straight California, early 20s, Spanish architecture has been kind of interpreted more in a modern sense instead of the more traditional Mediterranean look. And I think that's what Mike is doing here in order to keep their image and their branding for Love Culture. And so that's been Mike's challenge, is to work within these guidelines, but yet use the warm tone stucco. This is more of a persimmon versus a deep red. So that's the same challenge that Louis Vuitton had. It's not your traditional, Santa Barbara style. But it's what we had, to work with, what Mike had to work with, given the design parameters that, that Love Culture.
Well, I mean, one of the instances you mentioned gives it. If I can take a look at that the checklist, so that I can be specific. Depicts a unique building facade distinct in setting and form. I know some of that's subjective.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Okay.
I guess my only question is, I'm assuming that this is indicative of other Love Culture facades. Do you have any pictures of any existing stores?
They're doing they have 2 exterior projects under construction right now. I don't have them on me. I can certainly email you the progress photos of those.
I was just curious. I guess I just wanted to be sure that this was kind of the direction that,
as well as the DRB presentations to their respect. There's one in Ohio and one in Florida.
Okay.
I can forward those as well if you want.
Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Thanks. I have no further questions.
I have one more question.
Dawn?
Just to follow up with Carol's question, it prompted another question for me, and that is the front facade of your storefront. If you look at the guidelines, it's in the blue shaded area, which represents the plaza courtyard area. I don't know what page that's on. I had it, and then I lost it too. I thought it was earlier too. Oh, there it is. It's you guys are actually right here, which is funny because that one ends right in front of the. I don't understand that.
This pops out in front.
But this front area is supposed to be the blue, which it then refers you to page 24 and 25, and what
Gives you a height.
gives you a height, and it says all tenants within the plaza courtyard designated areas shall extend to a height of 26 to 30 feet for at least 60% of their total elevation. But you don't have any area over 23.6, so you don't have any area that even meets the minimum height for that block. So how does that meet the and the reason I'm asking is because we've just continually to see all these great requirements. We see a bunch of projects come in that don't meet them.
That don't meet our criteria.
I would jump on that same area right there. We're looking at the back of the building and where the mezzanine is to be removed, and that area also is to be increased in height and brought into the vernacular of the Santa Barbara style, which is Mediterranean style, and that's pretty clear on that.
Well, I think again, some of the challenges are that we've all heard are the current economic conditions. I mean, we're at this point where we want to stay within the intent, I guess, of, as far as our tenants, as far as the design goes, but at the same time, no one has unlimited funds in their checkbooks right now. I mean, we really have to design sensibly in a way that we can actually open stores. So we're open to kind of reinterpretations of some of these guidelines in order to make these projects work.
So another question then is, what you're saying is you consider additions to square footage inexpensive construction as opposed to increases in parapet heights.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty simple thing. I mean, you've got the canopy already extending and cantilevered out. So really all it is a small spread footing and, storefront. It's not an expensive thing to do at all. I mean, it's relatively minor.
But the parapets are really expensive.
But the parapets, I mean, you get more into structure and lateral design and all that, I think, as far as getting the higher tower elements. And I think we've had in a couple of other locations where the tower, we kind of had to back off just because of the structural implications. So, this I think is a pretty good solution.
We're engaging a lot of the existing canopy in this scheme. And in all honesty, the tenant's direction, or the direction given to me by tenant, did not entail anything on the back. They said they were fine with how that was, since it was really more of a service area, and that I was not to elaborate on that.
So a question for staff or the chair is, are we supposed to be... We've got somebody from MASRC right here saying that's not what they want, and they've got these guidelines. They're their guidelines, and if they want to break them, they can? That's the way we're supposed to...
No, those were approved by EBR. Those had to go through an approved process.
I know. We were all here, yeah. So this is not the first time this has come up, so I'm just wondering what our direction is supposed to be on these.
At the time that the guidelines were created, they were guidelines intended for the applicants and the tenants in the plaza to uphold to. So we do look at each design to uphold to their tenant design guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I just have one question before we go into the comments. Were you broaching there, Dawn, what the rear side of this project looks like? Did you have a proposal for that?
We haven't seen it. Gary, I thought Gary saw it.
Is there?
There is
Is there a drawing?
there is a
notation or
Area notation on it that the existing mezzanine is to be removed.
No, that's about it.
And it also says that's under a separate permit. But that is an area that is actually supposed to be elevated, and so...
I think we need, at one, we need to see what this is, and we need to see what the ramifications of that is. That elevation.
Oh, the existing elevation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whether it's existing and it's going to stay or what, we need to know what that is.
Okay.
Okay, so that's going to be first part of your, when you come back. Okay. Keith, comments?
Well, I guess if we have the guidelines and we're supposed to be following them, so that's our purpose, I would want to see the facade comply with the height requirements. I think because it is more internal to the mall itself, I think there's more kind of visual leeway in my mind as to the aesthetics. Looking at what's proposed here, I would like to see other materials besides just kind of colored plaster, and perhaps more, it's very kind of flat, and more projection of some sort on the facade of, canopy of some sort, or, some sort of horizontal projections to kind of break up the flatness. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Keith. Gary?
This particular spot can be seen as a direct shot down a corridor, and it's somewhat of a corner, and that's what it indicates on the mall layout. And when you can see directly down that corridor and right into the building, the village concept or the individual building concept is lost by that, and that's why this particular one, out of all the small ones, was to be raised in height. So I believe it needs to be raised in height. I believe that the materiality needs to be indigenous to Santa Barbara, meaning that there should be some stonework. It should meet the parameters, because this actually is a visual from the parking lot. You can see all the way into it. I think that it should be with the vernacular of the exterior of the mall that is facing the parking lot. That you get the overall look, and that's what it's supposed to be. And when we have this style of it, I don't think that meets our the mall's direction. Specifically, their directions are to hit the corners, and this is basically a corner. So I'm not in favor of this design.
Thanks, Gary. Dawn?
I guess just because of the guidelines stating that you're in that overlay that requires the building heights to be increased, that the project should comply with the guidelines. It technically isn't in the vernacular overlay, and I'm not exactly sure why, because I see Gary's point that you can see it from the parking lot. But strictly, if I'm reading what I've read so far in the guidelines, I think that at a minimum you need to increase that height. It makes it hard for you because you've got a contemporary building, and coming in with another 30 inches on that front facade is going to just, it's going to greatly affect the proportion of it. So I'm not exactly sure how you handle that. I think that those increased heights work better sometimes with the vernacular, creating towers and whatnot. So that's going to be a problem, I think. And just be careful when you do that if you're creating a volume that you pick up. I noticed on this corner where you do have one raised area, even though it's not quite high enough yet, and maybe it's just the perspective. It looks like it's just barely going back, and it just reads as a kind of a saloon storefront instead of as a volume. And one of the things that we picked up on other projects is that to make sure that those roof elements read as volumes instead of just heading back really close to the edge.
So there's a return.
So there's
is
a
what
return,
you're saying.
exactly.
Okay.
And I just look forward to seeing all the detailing and how all the storefront and the plaster connections are going to be integrating, because it seems like there's just some things that still need to be resolved, and I'm sure you didn't want to get too far until you got our initial feedback, but that's it for me.
Thanks, Doug. Paul? Comments. Looking at the design guidelines, we had a certain impression of what this shopping center was going towards, and then as a few of these shops have gone through, we lost that because there's a couple of sentences in there saying that the stores can stay with their traditional style or whatever. So I'm not holding on to the guidelines anymore. I feel like we kind of lost what the main goal was, or the goal that we were sold with. So I just look at this as what you're doing as your individual storefront, and maybe it'll look a little bit like it belongs in Santa Barbara, but you're doing what your storefront, your company does. So that's my take on the guidelines in this approach. So looking at this building, one comment that I would make is this top cap. It either should be a distinctive piece of metal that's a different color, or it should be plaster that's wrapped all the way over, not the painted sheet metal cap on the top. If you take a look at Ruth Chris Steakhouse, they have a plaster facade. They've got the metal, and then they paint it, and then you wait 3 years, and the metal's going to rust. It's going to drip, and it's going to be a different color. You look at some of the historical buildings on State Street, or just some of the new ones that are just recently built. You wrap it with bitumen, you cover it with plaster, and it looks nicer and cleaner. So that's your choice of a decision there, but the painted metal cap is not a good direction to go. I do like this corner, this interaction that you have here between the persimmon and this brown, and the way that there's one going back and then this dies into it. And Don was commenting that we need to have that there. This interaction that you have these volumes, and so that there's a little bit of an overlap. The way that's happening here needs to continue on. So maybe this needs to come up or come down because these two line up at the same plane, and so you can move these elements around a little bit. It would help. I also noticed that you're using a palette of grays, where this is more of a brown, and this is a cream, and this is your persimmon color. So I actually think these colors are nicer than going with a medium gray and a light gray. This would be more indicative of Santa Barbara. We have a little more splash. If it was just a study in gray, it'd be a little bit mundane.
Carl?
Well, unlike Paul, I am going to stay with the guidelines. I'm going to make two types of comments. The first one is I just want to, make some comments. Now, you're the manager of the plaza or the owner?
No, I'm tenant coordination for Mace Rich.
Okay. The guidelines is what was written to produce a main street as if it was a Mediterranean village. And the storefronts were to be reflective as if things had grown or changed throughout time, like we would see, in a Mediterranean village. And the last few changes that you've made, one of the biggest problems that I see, and I have to say all the money that you've put into the improvements are really great. I think your decisions on the overall mall have been really successful, and I enjoy visiting the mall a lot. However, the last few storefronts, one of the biggest problems is, number one, it's not Hispanic any longer. It's getting very contemporary. But the amount of glazing is almost shocking at night because we have so much light coming out. It's not just light that is emitting from the building, but you see the sources of the light. And a lot of your tenants are skirting the issue of the signage code, where they have so much glazing that they're hanging their special sale signs and different percentage off, where it's not in the storefront, but it's on the wall, and it's as if you see it. But the biggest problem is when you circulate at night, you have this more or less majority of low light that's just coming from the storefronts, and then you have 2 or 3 examples where it's just glaring. I mean, it is disturbingly glaring, and that is because of the amount of glazing, the amount of window square footage that you're allowing on the storefront. I think the direction of these last few improvements in your tenants have really been in a bad vein. I think it is not something that I support. And being on the ABR, I could look back on that and say those were not good decisions. It's almost like devaluing your overall property and the other tenants that are there. Now, with that said, I'm going to put that aside. I just sort of wanted to say that to you. This storefront, I'm just really going to go back to the guidelines. I'm going to say, even though this is what all of your Love Culture storefronts look like in Ohio and in Florida, welcome to Santa Barbara. And the La Cumbre Plaza is something that I think very strongly the guidelines say, let's try to fit into Santa Barbara and not make this look like a strip mall, that it could be in Ohio or in Florida. And I would say that this needs another pass of design where you try to incorporate some of the Mediterranean elements and not look at some of the last couple recent alterations to the storefront as your inspiration and your way of doing this. I can't support this. I think this is probably the most glazing we have in all of our renovated storefronts. I don't remember any of them coming in with this much glass in the front. So I can't support this as is. And I know that there's a compromise between the Love Culture storefronts in other cities and making it look as if it was in a Mediterranean village. There's got to be a compromise with that.
Okay. Chris?
I don't really have too much additional to add. I would kind of agree more with Keith that we could use a little more embellishment. I think somehow maybe some additional horizontal elements and some more variation in height, I think, with some of these areas where it pushes out. But other than that, I will just sort of defer to the architects. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. For me, I have to, seeing this form that comes in every time we have one of these tenant designs at this mall. When we first had the plan here that was presented and we voted on this and we went through the review of this, I thought that would be a really great step to the next review. And what it has turned out to be is actually like this was one object that you guys just had done, and this is just an exercise in paperwork. Mm-hmm. And the review of this to that, it's almost like it's totally different. And it's really disappointing. It's almost in a way that I don't even want to read it, because it's like, it's just totally, it doesn't even take into consideration what you set out to gain in the first part. So I have to say that every time I see one of these now, I really get upset almost in a way to see it, because I think it's like you're trying to lead us astray. So anyway, that having said that, I'd like to, I think that using the guidelines that I thought was set out quite well, this is a focus, like Gary said, as you come down from the parking lot, and I think that this needs to stick to the guidelines on the height guidelines that it gave for this area, and I think it needs to have a, while it is one of those mid-block portions, it's one of the mid-block, or one of the few mid-block portions that actually is viewed right down an opening. Most of the mid-block ones, there is an alleyway or there's an access that goes right through a pedestrian way. But this is one of them where it's that T. And I think that's a really important elevation, and sticking to the guidelines there in trying to get more of a cohesive look to the mall from the exterior is very important. So I feel right now as it's a very, very contemporary look. And in my view, I can see this being on a more less axial route to the pedestrian as they come down. It's a bit garbled language for me. I would have liked to have seen it a lot more simplified. But really, I think taken as a whole, I think we have to come at the design of this front in a different way, and go back to having a stronger height presence and more of a presence that's more cohesive with the entryways of the plaza that Macerich has set out earlier. And that's where I am. Thanks. So with that, I'd like to open the floor for anyone who would like to make a motion on this. This would be indefinite continuance back to full board. And any motion that's made, I would like to say that we would like to see what the rear elevation of this project is, and that we should see, since this is a mid-block proposal, it should have composite elevations of both sides, where we see what the neighboring, or as many units as we can see along that street, so-called pedestrian street frontage is on the front and the rear. In addition to that, I would like to have a roof elevation with all the AC units and the heights of the AC units in relation to the parapet heights. That's another disturbing item of this mall that we're seeing is the popping up air conditioning units that are quite visible from the parking lot. So anyone would like to take a stab at that?
I'll make the motion that you just made. How about that?
Very good.
I would just add one comment to the streetscape elevation, that if the adjacent parcels are currently boarded up, that you draw what the previously approved street elevation is. Off the elevation, just don't draw a big rectangle and call it plywood to be determined later. We want to know what street frontage look there is, so we can see what kind of homogeneous or what kind of character there is there. That's so I'll first that motion.
I'll second the
Second by
motion,
Joy.
except there was nothing in the motion yet about the direction that the architecture should take. So I wanted to point that out to the maker of the motion.
I'll let you run with it.
I don't really have a suggestion. I just wanted to point out that I mean, I just since we're all discussing it, I heard some split opinions on
I would
it.
say we're 60-40 split in the sense that a majority of the board would like it to be more historical nature, belonging in Santa Barbara. And I would say the 60-40 is split, saying that this is an end of an axis that needs to have some significantness to it with the height of the parapet. And it's to your client's benefit that basically a clock tower or anything at the end of an axis is, hey, look at me, this is my store. So you have an opportunity, or your client has an opportunity of doing something that really sings.
I don't think the increased height is an issue. I mean,
Well, you have to deal with the lateral.
yeah, no, I understand the scale, though, is what I'm concerned about.
So I would say that the board would like you to consider adding this to the motion. The board would like to have the applicant provide stronger ties to the local architecture in Santa Barbara.
I don't have to vote for the item
No?
if I was asking that question because I wanted to figure out how I was going to vote for it. And so since you're the maker and I wanted to get a read on everybody else, I'm going to be one of the ones that doesn't feel that it has to go in the vernacular direction just because of the guidelines. And there are other, because of the other reason, there are other storefronts that have taken a more contemporary approach to Mediterranean architecture.
So you're taking your second back?
So, no, I don't know if I have to. I can vote against
Then
it.
I would go back to saying that it's a 50-50 split. The board is split. I was saying 60-40, and I was thinking 60% of the board wanted to see more historical.
And that may be the case. So, since you're the maker, I wanted
But I'm not going to state there, but I would say that there is, I would almost say, a unanimous thing of a disappointment in what the mall owner brought to us and what we thought we were getting and what we have seen. And because there's 2 or 3 sentences thrown into the text saying that the tenants can go with their style that's found elsewhere in the United States, that we're now stuck with these buildings when all the glossy pictures in here that you guys spent money drawing don't match what the illusion was that we thought we were buying into.
Okay, just a quick, just now, a quick poll of all those who think that the view of this entry should take on a more compatible architecture with the entry elements of the mall. That's
Well, let me just say, I'm more bothered by how much windows are exposed.
But that,
And
that may come up after also.
I mean, regardless of the style, it's just too much, window in
That may,
All right.
that may
That's
come
what
up
you're going to
also.
get
We're
with
gonna-
contemporary
yeah.
architecture.
So,
You're going to get the
not
structure.
necessarily.
but,
No,
okay,
not
look, we
necessarily.
need to clarify
Okay.
what the motion is and where we stand.
Well, see,
because
I-
we don't understand the motion right now, and the idea is I'm taking a poll to see where everyone stands on the compatibility of this elevation with the other entry portions of the project that have been
Okay.
newly built already.
Okay, I would
Chris?
say it's incompatible.
But where would you like to go? Where that's what I'm saying.
I'm actually fine with the style. I think the applicant has heard our concern, and I would hope he would take that to heart and somehow, bring it into somewhat of a Santa Barbara context. But to me, I actually like the style.
Okay, Carol.
I think that there could be a compromise where if this is what your Love Culture storefronts look like elsewhere, to get more architecture around, to get more architecture incorporated, less windows, and bring in a few, well-appointed Mediterranean as dictated by the guidelines. And then you're creating the street front that is La Cumbre Plaza and not just your individual storefront.
So what does that say to
This application is incompatible.
It fits.
It fit.
The style of architecture.
Okay.
Chris voting on it, the way he voted, it fits.
I agree. Like I said when I was making my comments, I agree that I agreed with you that it should have been one of those storefronts that was incorporated in the vernacular, but it wasn't. So for that reason, if we're going by the guidelines, and that's what staff is directing us to do, then technically it does not have to fall under that. And so that's why I would say no, that the more contemporary approach to the Mediterranean materials, I would support in the right application. That's how I stand.
Given the direction that the mall has already gone with the other corner units that have already been developed that are not Mediterranean, I say that this application is fine, but it should or could have more vertical emphasis for drama.
I say it has to be in Santa Barbara vernacular. It's fine.
Well, I'm voting against the present proposal for sure.
What does that mean?
I mean,
Tell us.
yeah. I mean, I just think that this proposal, being on an entry axis, should have a stronger compatibility. I'm not saying that it has to be exactly Spanish. It has to have a stronger compatibility, and right now I am not seeing it. And I think that the interpretation of saying plaster that is used in a different fashion, that interpretation is so wide as to not even exist. It's like, I just don't get it. So,
Mr. Chair?
I'm
I was going to have the staff read back the motion the way it is and see how it sounds.
Okay, you'll have to give me some leeway there. Return with proposed heights, both rear and composite elevations of both pedestrian street frontages, front and rear. Return with proposed street frontages, including details for those boarded up. Return with front axes of frontages. Provide stronger ties to the local architecture of Santa Barbara.
There's nothing in there about heights?
Yeah, there was.
There was?
The first
okay.
part.
I missed that part.
So I think just make a motion and see who runs with it, and then.
So that's the motion as a first. And if Don, are you okay being the second? Do you have any tweaks?
If there could be some language in the motion that would be okay to the maker of the motion, that at least two members of the board were, well, it doesn't matter if it's just two. I probably won't vote for it if it has to go in the, if you're directing the applicant to go in the traditional Spanish vernacular.
Can you read that one phrasing again?
Not like the motion.
No, but I like the way it's worded because I thought it was general enough in the modern sense of taking Spanish architecture and making it contemporary.
Provide stronger ties to the local architecture of Santa Barbara.
That's pretty broad, so I guess I can vote for it.
I'm going to vote opposed to that because regardless what style, it's just too much glazing. So that's going to be why I'm going to vote opposed to it.
Yeah. Let's see how the motion goes. So we have a motion on the table. Just in case it goes ahead, would the motion, the maker and the seconder include that the applicant provide composite elevations of the project so that we can see the pedestrian streetscape on both the rear and the front of their project, and that they provide a full roof plan with all proposed air conditioning or HVAC equipment with heights of the units and parapet heights. Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
3. All those against? So 3 against. So that's 6 of us? 1, 2, 3, yeah. So is it 4, and 4, 3?
We don't have 6 people.
Okay, so yeah, I thought it was, I only saw 3 hands go up in the first time. Okay, so we have 4-3, motion passes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
I'm a little confused, but
Yes, Keith. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I also need to step down from this item.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for making the motion. Trying hard to get it where it needs to go. Thank you. Okay, we have a final review, 336 North Milford Street. Julian and
Hi, Bob.
hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Fine, thanks. Julian is there. I will stay that way. Yeah. Okay, thank you. You can state your name and
Good evening, Shauna Unsel with Perkowitz and Ruth Architects. I'm here representing Fresh and Easy Neighborhood Market.
Bob Cunningham, Arcadia Studio Landscape Architects.
We brought back the plans for the final design review approval based on the staff's comments of the November 16th hearing. And we have revisited many of the items that were discussed at the last meeting and have the new drawings for you to take a look at. We have addressed all of the previous comments.
Just excuse me, just for the benefit of the board,
Sure.
I'm just going to quickly try and read these minutes. Provide all exterior door, window, and building articulation details and finishes, floor plans, sections, and elevations. Study the original preliminary approved design for style and details, specifically regarding the entry tower and how it relates to the entry. Revise the copper finial on the roof. Revise the wrought iron arched areas for planting on the street side. Study the proportion of the brick finish archway on the street elevation. Apply a more subtle use of the alternate tile pattern. Study the proportion of the windows with the architectural style. Study a color palette more indigenous to the Santa Barbara Spanish Revival style and return with alternate color schemes. The brown brick veneer is not acceptable. Provide another color proposal. Provide an alternate wainscot color between the 3 columns. Remove all references to signage. All signage is to be reviewed by the sign committee under a separate application. Provide a complete landscape plan including all existing street trees. Provide significant landscaping along the patio edge the street elevation, and the Gutierrez Street elevation. Okay, thanks. So,
Very good. If I may just walk you through some of the improvements that we've made. I guess the best elevation to start with would be
Okay.
on Milpas, which is the next one here. So in response to the comments of the last hearing, we have revisited some of the materials and finishes, specifically the brick veneer that was proposed in these wall relief areas and at the planter. The alternate material is proposed on the new material board. As well as we did actually went back and looked at some of the paint finishes that were specified. We did eliminate one of those finishes. The remaining paint colors that were represented on these drawings were carried over from the previous Long's Drug Store approval, and I believe those drawings have been included in the packet for reference. We also revised the wrought iron detailing along the Milpas Street. As you recall, there may have been an issue with some proportions over there last time. I think it's a little more traditional. We've also looked at the entry tower features and added some additional spandrel glazing to the left of the entry doors. We've added a chandelier to fill some of the blank space that was below the arch, as one staff member suggested last time. And then as we move along, to the next elevation, which is the rear parking lot side, we have revised the glazing along this entrance here, more of a traditional Santa Barbara style, with the arches and a lower panel that will be spandrel glazing. We also had some comments that the blank area above the storefront on this entry tower needed something, and we've added a canvas awning over that. We've also changed the materials that were proposed within the ceramic tile reliefs to a more subtle color. Like last time, there was somewhat of a bold yellow color in that palette, and that's been removed. And we've also enhanced and shown some landscaping features here, as we've brought our landscape architect this time, and have complete landscape irrigation plans as well in the package. We've also removed the finial that was on the previous design. We have embellished we've added a lot of detailing, and we've embellished the entry, what I would call the plaza, on the corner of Milpas and Gutierrez. There's some details within the package that show some of the tile risers that are being proposed there, and some of the finishes that we're going to put in that plaza, as well as the wrought iron detailing.
would you just for using this color board here,
Sure.
could you just point out which this G here, which is like a red brick?
That's right. It's more of a terracotta,
Terracotta.
brick, and we're proposing that on the landscape walls, the wainscoting on the front elevation, as well as we'll use a full brick soldier course on the top of the planter walls.
So this here is also the same.
That's correct.
Okay, and R is where?
R is a integral colored concrete, and you'll find that on the plan view of the plaza area. It's actually in between some of this this other tile work that's within the drawings. I can
And
show
the
you if you'd
floorscape?
like.
Is
Yeah,
that
it's in
floorscape?
the hardscape at the entrance.
Hardscape. Okay.
And the S borders the colored concrete and is a tread for the entry tile patterns And we have some enlarged plans detailing that as well.
Okay. And the J?
J and K are two ceramic tiles that are proposed for the wall reliefs. I think you'll primarily see those on the other elevation
Right here.
underneath these canopy features.
Okay. And this is the
F is
parking
the
lot.
concrete block wall that's proposed for the site. It's an 8-foot-high block wall with vines.
Okay. and
It will grow over
that's-
that.
That's your awning. It's the awning material.
Correct.
And this one here is M.
H and M, those should be the awning materials.
Is it a banded awning? These are H.
I don't believe so. There may be an alternate color. This is H, and that would be consistent for all three.
There's an M here. Is that the
Oh, I'm
metal?
sorry. M is the storefront color.
The storefront?
Yes.
Color. That's M. So it's this green?
Yes.
Okay, and P.
P is a stain color for the trellises that we have over the seating areas.
Okay. All right, and these are the body colors here.
That's
This
correct.
light one is this one here.
Yes.
And then B is this one in the back.
Right.
That's B. And C is right down here.
And we've actually eliminated one or two colors from the previous design.
Okay. Let's just take a quick look through the
Sure.
other detail sheets then. This side.
Here's the plaza area. As you enter the building, we've actually added some spandrel glazing, although this is an equipment room off to the side of the corridor. It still gives you the appearance of a more prominent entry feature, being that it's on the corner. We've also added more detailing to illustrate the materials that we're proposing in this plaza area. So we will have this terracotta colored quarry tile
That's
border.
that. It's MG.
That is S on
this
the
one,
material
okay.
board. And then the R color would be used throughout here.
Okay.
And the tile risers, the ceramic tile risers, will use a variation of
These here?
of the Q colors that are there. And that will occur on these three risers as well as these three.
So is it one of these patterns each along here?
That's
Is
correct.
that it?
Yes.
Just one of those patterns. Okay. Let's go.
Those are trash enclosure details.
And the cap around.
This is a fixture plan to be used for reference. I know one of the members last time wanted to see what was going on the inside of the building.
This is Milper Street here.
That's
and
correct.
This is the property line right here. This wall goes right up the property line, does it?
No, I think we have actually a 12-inch.
You have 12-inch
There's a
planter.
planter there, yeah.
Okay. That's actually, but it's not shown here then.
I don't think it runs at the full length.
Most likely on the site plan. Our block wall terminates here, and then we do have some planting along that wall
Along the side.
that will
here.
be visible.
Okay. Okay, skylights all internal.
Some of the additional detailing, the tile, the cornices, the wall sconce that we're proposing.
Yep. Precast concrete windows. Yes.
Can you clarify again the color of the storefront?
Yes, that is the...
Because I thought you were saying M, which is this green, but M on the back says Sunbrella Fern, which is a canvas color.
Okay, it's one of these two, so H&M.
And the other one isn't used on your schedule.
H&M. It's the Arcadia Antique Patina color. It's an anodized color
Q.
of the storefront, which
is
is
Q.
M.
Well, there's a line separating them like this, so it leads me to... There's a line separating them, so when there's a line separating, it looks like this is Q, this is M, this is H.
No,
But
it
that's
starts
not the way it goes.
left to right, actually. So it is M.
M, the Arcadia is the windows.
M
And that
is
is correct.
Arcadia, which is correct, and that M is this,
That's correct.
is the green.
That's accurate. That is the color.
Okay.
It looks a little more green on the material board. I think it's more of a subtle tone of the anodized storefront.
Okay. And this was the original elevations that were presented.
That's correct, prior to Fresh and Easy taking the project on.
Okay. So, Bob, you want to go through the landscape?
Sure. The first sheet's irrigation. It's an entirely drip irrigation system. The backflow preventer is located in this corner area. We don't really have much choice but to put it there, but we are screening it with the landscaping. And you'll see that on the next sheet. This is not an illustrative plan, it's a working drawing, so bear with me, please. It's not demonstrative, I guess you'd have to say. Essentially, we have the same, more or less the same plant palette that we had with the Long's proposal. The existing trees, we've got one evergreen pair on site that will be preserved. And we've got 4 evergreen pairs along along Gutierrez Street, existing street trees. 2 big ficus trees on Milton Street, adding 1 new street tree in a tree well, and that's a prickly paperbark tree. We've also got that tree several locations on the site. We've got it here, 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 and here. And that is, it's more of a skyline tree, 40, 45 feet. And then the smaller trees within the parking lot are shoestring acacias. These locations where the larger circles are, and then a smaller tree along the edge, the water gum, which is Stanniopsis lorina. The ground covers throughout are 2 different kinds of Dianella. It's a strap-leaf perennial, very drought-tolerant, very tough, long-lived. And then for accents, bird of paradise and 2 different varieties of kangaroo paw. In the front accent planting, we've got a Mediterranean fan palm clump, and then a cluster of 3 red dracaenas in this location here. And the ground cover in these the spilling ground cover in the planters along here is a compact asparagus fern. On the pergola over the patio, 3 Cecile Brunner white variety roses climbing onto the pergola. And then along the front here, in rhythm with the arches, 2 Venetian blind mahonias, on these outer columns where there are no light fixtures, and that when the 2 light fixtures are located here, Gulfstream Heavenly Bamboo is a backdrop, Lily of the Nile, and then I believe the ground cover planting there is, I'm not sure which one we've got there. It's
MELEOEO.
no. It's one of these guys. It's more Dianella. Okay. And so that's essentially it. It's a tough, drought-tolerant ground cover. Oh, one more thing. We've got 2 Hacienda Creeper Boston Ivies on this blank wall, and then 3 on the back side. And on the stone wall and back at a little over 20 feet on center, cat claw vine.
Okay.
And yeah, well, one more thing. We did coordinate the light fixture location in the parking lots with the canopy trees so that we've got a minimum of interference one with the other. So you can see the trees are in the planters, the light posts are out in the field. Yeah.
Okay. What about this one? There's 2 here.
That one we're going to reverse. You can see that the light fixture is to the right of the tree. Those 2 will switch positions so that the light fixture is out in the parking lot and not behind the tree where it's not necessarily going to be very effective.
Oh, this will move like that?
Yeah, we haven't.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
It just needs to be far enough back from the front of the planter that it's not an issue with the loading zone here of the trucks.
Okay. Great. Bring out the public comment. Anyone in the public would like to comment? Seeing no one, bring it back to staff.
A letter of concern from Ms. Paula Westbury.
Thanks very much. And then I'll bring that back to the board for questions. And Gary?
The first question would segue off of those light fixtures in the parking lot. I saw a note in here on the details that they were 30 feet. What I was wondering is, some of them seem to be in close proximity to the neighbors. The detail said 30. I think there was a note on here that may have said 25.
They should be 25. There may be a detail that says 30-foot max, but
The detail says 30.
I believe the cut sheet that was included with the second part of the material board should show
Well,
a 25.
the details do say 30, but they do have a legend on here that says a 25-foot mounting height.
Okay.
But I did have some concern with some areas that those lights are in close proximity to the single-story wood structure and the 2-story neighbors here. This light here. So,
I think what we propose there is just shielding so it doesn't go over the neighboring properties.
this can count.
Anything else, Kevin? Yeah. Dawn?
About those light fixtures, is that the height that you think that they should be, both of you? Is that the height? And why are they 25 feet? And one of my questions to Bob was, how high are the acacias? How high did they get?
Well, the acacias will get to be about 30, 35 feet. The skirts will be, basically as low or as high as they're maintained. So, I'm figuring we're going to have a 15-foot clearance under those things. That typically the tree, wants to be a weeping, spreading tree. It's the tree that's at the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf at the intersection of State and De La Vina. Those 4 trees there, that's basically what you're getting here.
It's the yellow flowering
It's got
acacia.
Yeah, no, it's not.
It's not that one?
No, it's a pretty insignificant flower on the tree. It's got a leaf about this long, very skinny. It's called shoestring acacia.
Okay. And so my question is, why do the light fixtures have to be so tall?
In terms of the height, I think we're open to reducing that if needed.
Okay. the roses are climbing on the trellis that mainly gets shade, except for in the summer at sunset, because of the direction of north. Are they going to be okay? I don't know much about roses, but what I do know is that they need sun, mainly.
They'll get full afternoon sun every day of the year, I would think.
They will? Okay.
Yeah.
That was it.
Thanks. Carol? Chris?
A few questions. Did you consider an alternate to that acacia, the weeping, or the shoestring acacia? I'm just kind of concerned about how close they are to the path of traffic and having vans or trucks come through there. And when they go in, they won't be 15 feet skirt height. So I'm wondering if there was alternatives considered.
No.
And then would you consider an alternative?
Well, my experience with the tree has been pretty favorable. Not that I authored this particular project, but the corner of La Cumbra and State, where the Pete's Coffee is, those trees were planted in the parking lot, both along the driveway and adjacent to the parking lot. And I don't think there have ever been any issues with those.
Okay.
At the coffee being the same issue, it's the trees just need to be pruned up.
Eventually they'll
Right.
get to the
So
right point.
I don't foresee issues with them. They're a fairly vertically growing tree if you train them that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm fine with that then. I do have a concern about the roses also. I guess I'm wondering if it is going to be shady most of the day in there, and to add more shade with roses overhead, I just worry that it's going to get kind of cold in that patio area. So I guess I'll save that for comments. But my last question was on the Milpas Street frontage. You have 2 ficus, and then you added a melaleuca. I guess I'm wondering, are we steering away from putting more ficus on Milpas?
Yeah, if I can respond, I'm a member of the Street Tree Advisory Committee, and we've been dealing with the ficus around town for quite a while. These trees, the selection on Milpas in this particular location is per direction of the city arborist. That's the melaleuca is the tree of choice now. It'll take a much smaller parkway, and hopefully we won't see the problems that the ficus have had.
So that's the direction we're heading?
Yeah, you won't see any more ficus on Milpas Street.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. I had one question so far was 2 questions. The wrought iron pattern that you have inside of those arches, can you maybe tell us where that pattern came from? We are hoping that they had something that was more Spanish revival.
Well, I think it's more conceptual in nature. We haven't selected. We would like to select from a local manufacturer to create that design, but we haven't really finalized that. I think what we're doing is going back, revisiting the original approval, and trying to stay within that concept theme, which was a little bit changed on the last presentation, so I'm not sure if you recall, but this is more in the traditional style of the original approval, as opposed to we had almost like a green screen with an infilled panel that had the wrought iron last time.
Right.
But I think we're
You're open to
still looking at that detail and can make it a little more traditional if needed.
Okay, and then this drawing here says that the parking lot light standard here is a maximum 30 feet, and while it says it's a maximum, does anywhere on your drawing say exactly what height you actually want it at?
Yes, I believe that's on the site plan. It should be on the cover page here, which is that down there.
25, okay, that's 25 feet. Okay.
But it says mounting height, and if you look at the mounting height, it could be construed as this being that's the mounting height, and that's 25 feet, so this is 2 feet, so you're up to 27. So it's really ambiguous what's going on.
Okay.
Because it says 25, but you really have to add 2 feet max, but then it doesn't say what the actual height is.
Yeah.
We're certainly interested in lowering that. I don't know if there's a standard that you guys are looking for. Or...
Okay, well, we'll give
Is it 20 feet?
Comment on that.
Yeah. Okay. So questions in the comments, Gary?
I just have a quick question. I remember like the lighting plan for the city had the Milpas district as a lighting guideline where there was some language about the overall height and everything. Does anybody recall that?
I can't remember. I'm actually on the Streetlight Advisory Committee, but I don't remember the exact height along Milpas of those. But I do remember that the fixture itself was not this fixture, but because these lights are internal to the site, they're not required to follow the Milpas Street guidelines necessarily. These are much more contemporary, kind of bronze, disappearing, not making a statement fixture. But
Because
no,
it seemed to me that 20 feet was the standard.
yeah, I think you might be right. I was thinking 18, but then maybe 20 max is what I was kind of recalling, and we could look it up, but that was going to be my comment.
Okay, comments, Gary.
First, I'll comment on the wrought iron on Milpas Street. I think that it's a bit much. So we would like something that's a little more. I would imagine that something's a little more indigenous to our area, and not quite as many curlicues. And I also want to talk about the entryway. We talked about how the front entryway wasn't, last time we talked about how it wasn't addressing the street, how the doors were at an angle, and I don't see how that this is much different than what we were looking at before. I still feel like the entry is really it's not a very friendly entry. It's not opened up to the center of the archway. It's not an inviting entry. It doesn't. To me, it's still a bit askew. It's not headed towards the entry of the door, and I don't think that met the direction that we were asking. One thing, I was kind of looking at your plan, Bob, and I was wondering about the clinging vines on the rock walls, and there were some rock walls that are plastered walls that are in the front of the building that I would be concerned that in the future they may get graffitied or something. And I didn't see if there was any vines in that area. Are you vining all of these, specifically the split-face CMUs?
I believe the split face is only at on the property line.
In the perimeter in the parking lot.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's covered with the cat claw vine, which really is tenacious.
Has cat claws.
Yeah, and it's it'll need to be sheared back probably once a year by the gardeners to keep it from getting really thick. But it will cling by itself, and it will cover the wall pretty quickly.
In the wall at the entry in the front, the lower wall. Is that anything done
We
to that?
don't have any attaching vines on either the Milpas or the Gutierrez Street frontages. At the moment, if it's maybe our desire, we're happy to do that. But I usually try not to put vines on buildings unless it's an issue with regard to glare. Graffiti, obviously is an issue, but I like to keep vines off buildings as much as possible, just for the purpose of facilitating future maintenance. The back sides of the buildings, the driveway side and the parking lot side.
No, I did notice that on the one side. You had some Boston ivy.
Right.
That was my basic comments on that. The entryway I'm still concerned with, and I was concerned with the last time I was concerned with the two towers competing with each other, and I don't think I got enough support board wise of how that went, but that comment would still remain with me, that I still feel like the two towers are competing, and that the one tower at the corner of Milpas and Gutierrez should be the focus of that.
If I may, I respond to the entry tower plan. You know, we do have two approaches here. One is from Milpas and one is from Gutierrez. So I do feel like the skewed entry works well with both of those and does not impact the layout of this this plaza area. We did look at cornering that off, squaring off that corner, and we will really lose a lot of square footage in there in regards to the landscaping and the circulation area. The other challenge was if we do relocate that tower, again, we're losing a large part of the landscaping and some of the trees that we're putting in there. So it is a little bit of a challenge to just slide that door over and make it centered within that space under the tower, and that's why we did propose the spandrel glazing off to the side of the entry, which is on the new elevation.
John?
I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I'm a little bit out of the loop. I'm getting my comments in late, but I do remember this project from last time, and I know you're in final, and you just come back with revisions, right? Mm-hmm. Just some slight revisions. I just have to state for the record that all along I felt that there was a little bit of a missed opportunity with this building, and that you've got the outdoor seating basically in the shade. And then yet the building that faces west, where it's going to get all the sun, is closing itself off of getting the sun. I think it's a huge mistake, and I know that the project already got preliminary approval, so I think that's too late of a comment to make. But I just wanted to state that I think it's a. Oh, it was. I just think that, I mean, we're trying to get people to walk on Milpas, and yet the only place you can sit is going to be in the shade most of the time. So I think that's, like I said, a huge mistake. And I never did like, and I still don't like these arches that are doing nothing. There's no windows in them. In the center one, there's a storage shelf. There's no light coming into the storage room. There's a walk-in right here in this corner, but there's a storage shelf here, and there's nothing here. It's just part of the retail space of the main building. So I always felt that these spaces were weird, dead spaces. And I definitely don't like the proposed wrought iron. I think that comment's already been made, but I think that's a problem area of this building. And I'm not liking the color of the storefront. I think it's just a little too benign and not enough of a contrast for me against the egret, which is kind of an off-white color of the building. I would prefer to see a darker color storefront. I'm not really understanding. I'm only commenting on the things that I don't like. There's a lot of things I do like, but just in an effort to save time, I'm not really understanding the canvas awning in kind of this bulbous shape. It looks like it's supposed to come out beyond and then be supported by a rim that's kind of a ring that comes out beyond the building on all sides.
Yeah, it's not really on a radius per se. It is a sloped arch, so I think it does appear that it is a radius.
Yeah, it looks like a radius to me on the drawings, and I wasn't understanding that.
Yeah,
it didn't
I
make
think
sense
it's more linear.
Go to that. It's the east.
Similar to the
entrance.
other, we should have a section through there actually.
The section won't really show me though what I need to see. But on the elevation, on the colored elevation, it looks like it's a dome.
So you can see here and here.
It doesn't show it. It doesn't really.
Yeah, I think it's more of a traditional straight out awning rather than a circular
But it's closed on
dome.
all sides, so it has to be this kind of. I just don't understand that. I just think it should be a straight awning like the rest of the awnings.
Mm-hmm.
And what else? And I think the lights are too high. I would say 18 is more appropriate, but I would be willing to go up to 20.
Okay.
But I think that Chris pointed out that on the Mesa, 16 is the recommendation. It just seems high to me.
Yeah. Carol?
Well, I don't think I have anything additional to offer, but I do agree with Dawn that this Melpis Street elevation is sort of a missed opportunity, but that's in the past, I think that's just how that is. But I think the landscape plan is fine. And
Okay, Chris?
I'm kind of in the same boat. I know we made a comment last time about that seating area being on the north side, and it does seem like a missed opportunity. And I think adding roses up may compound the problem and make it seem even more cold and stark. So I would question that choice there. I'm wondering if there are mountain views from that area.
I think there are.
Okay. Excuse me. So I guess, Bob, all I would say is maybe reconsider the roses or some lighter vine, perhaps.
Okay. We could, and I'm not if we gave direction with regard to the maintenance and just kept the roses to the perimeter of the pergola so that they didn't go over the pergola itself and form a roof, the client probably would prefer that because there's less to take care of. You'd get the appearance of the roses from the street, but you wouldn't have them overhead.
It would be good for the facade,
Yeah, primarily the reason for planting anything there is to dress up the facade, not so much to shade that, because as you say, we already have a pergola doing the shading. So we can write into the specs that that's taken care of in that way, and we can hope that it is.
Okay, that'd be
the
preferable.
chances are better that it will be taken care of
Right.
that
At least
way.
you tried.
As I say, it's less maintenance if you do it that way.
Okay. And that's all my comments.
Thanks, Chris. And my comments really are there's the history of the project is that really there's quite a few things that are really not perfect, but it's almost like it's been inherited in a sense.
I was going to ask about that. Because I'm now getting clear from staff, but go ahead and make your comments, and then I'm going to ask a question.
Well, I felt that it was kind of inherited, and the previous approval that we had on the Poira and David proposal was the basis for which we had to, go back to, and so I didn't want to, when I reviewed it last week, or was it last week?
It was 2 weeks.
I didn't want to stray too far from that proposal because we had already given direction at that point, and so that's where I stand on where it is today.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
What's new on this proposal and was also 2 weeks ago is the outdoor seating area. That was never included on the original proposal.
Right.
So they've added this outdoor seating area right here. And they've added some different detailing, although it's pretty similar to what we approved in the front. But this is all new, and the entry area is different from what we originally approved. They've moved a corridor over against the wall here, and they've made it come out to the front. And there's certainly ways that they can change this entryway, and there's certainly ways that this outdoor seating area, which is new, could be located to an area that would be more historic to the site and more user-friendly. And I across from the Lube Center and on Gutierrez Street isn't the most user-friendly, and how it's accessed on the site, it's virtually unknown to the applicant or to the user how to get to that seating area. You've got this weird corridor. You've got to go all the way out and back and around. So I think there's some basic site planning issues with the outdoor seating area, and I think we'll see whatever Don has.
Is it my turn?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this because I didn't know that. I mean, I agree with you that if those were things that we approved before, that we should stick with what we approved before. But if they're new things and they were problems, then I think that it's, unfortunately, something that should be brought up.
Yes.
And I really disagree with the entrance from Milpas and how you have to walk down a 80-foot corridor, almost an 80-foot corridor, and turn the corner and walk down another 30-foot corridor to get to the building, and it makes it like a high security type. I know that security is an issue, but there are alarms and things and that could do that instead of the architecture doing it. I think it's just really making it hard for people to feel comfortable in the space when they come in, to make them walk all the way around. And like Gary said, the dining, having to go outside of the building, and I just don't think it's going to be used, and it's in shade. I'm in disagreement with both of those aspects of the general floor plan, site planning layout.
I think what we have to stay with is that we have to stay with the previous discussion from way back when we saw it is that we wanted to see an entrance up here. We definitely wanted to see that from the street. So this entry area here, while it may have changed, and we can certainly talk about the change, but we always asked them to, when they had this, to have an entrance up here. I have almost, I haven't really given the internal breakdown of their project much review. May I agree with you that, this is it's a daunting kind of entry for anyone that's going to come in from Milpas Street, coming down here and going that way. I don't see it being a great benefit to the owners, but I also don't want to be too critical of their internal workings of their business.
But when it drives the external, how the entry works on the external, I think it's well within our purview. And that particular hallway is driving the architecture on the outside. That's why he says the door has to be at an angle.
Yeah, I think we are limited. We did look at potentially relocating some seating into this area, but without some substantial both footprint, fixture plan, and elevation changes, it didn't seem like we could accomplish that in the time frame here. We can certainly look at some of the circulation. I know it currently is accessible from both this entry where we have an access point into the seating area, as well as this entry and some of the approaches from the street here. So I think in terms of the accessibility, it is directly adjacent to both entry features. I do understand the concern with this corridor, and a typical model for Fresh and Easy would not be to have two entry points, but understanding the sensitivity of the project, we did want to keep this entry feature and tower intact. So that's what we're trying to accomplish, as well as keeping it secure, obviously.
I guess for us, for us on the review board, the way this would translate for us is that our fear would be is that this is eventually closed off from either lack of use or through the internal workings of your business, you decide that this is better used as being storage, and that these are closed off and everybody come here.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a total failure for us.
Well, yeah, it would be a huge expense to build all this and not to have anybody use it either. So,
yeah. So we would want to make sure that this door is never closed off.
Understood.
I mean, essentially what you're doing by making a corridor on that entrance is you're encouraging everybody to drive their cars. That's fundamentally the problem that I have with this. and Milpas people do walk on Milpas. So that's the problem I have, is that people aren't going to want to use that entrance because is that our purview or is it not our purview? That's what I'm having a hard time with, is when you say you want a door and then we say, oh yeah, put a door there. It doesn't. We're not just saying that the architecture looks better with a door there. We're saying that it makes the building more alive. And that door, what we really want, I guess what we're saying is that we want a door that's alive. And the door's just not going to be alive. It's going to, like Chris said, it's going to turn into an emergency exit.
Yeah.
And it's going to be discouraged.
I just want to ask, since we're looking at this, so a lot of people on Milpas go with their shopping carts. How do they, if off of Milpas, is there like an handicap ramp, or how do the carts get up?
There is. There's
It is
actually
right there, okay.
detailed on the enlarged plan. We do have a disabled access ramp here where you could take your cart up or down. We have a cart storage location over here that'll be within this plaza area.
No, I mean, they go with their little individual carts that they
Okay.
own.
Yeah, that would be completely accessible from this corner here.
Well, I do have to say, I mean, there is a charm on Milpas to sit and look at the people walk by and even the traffic, and you have that sort of interesting architecture. I mean, Milpas is very much of a community street, and to have the seating area, which is really like a little cafe, to have that not on Milpas, you're almost missing an opportunity of people coming in, buying their lunch, buying their drink, and then sitting out. I mean, I think the store itself is missing a great opportunity for that, merchandising, that customer base that would not want to go in there and get a sandwich and then sit basically on, in the shade on the side street where there's no action, there's no people, there's no life really. It's a huge missed opportunity for the business.
I mean, it's almost like if, I just don't want. I agree with you guys. I totally agree. I just trying to find a way where
I
we
know.
have the responsibility to be able to do these things, and I feel that trying to trouble with the internal workings of their business is it's an area where I'm not. We don't really have that purview.
I guess one thing that I've been thinking is that we ended up doing the same thing at Whole Foods. Their outdoor eatery is on the north side too, and I was concerned about that as well. I don't know how successful it's been as of late. I haven't really been there much, but it is sort of the same condition. Just want to throw that out there.
But if there was any change I would make is with the outdoor seating. I mean, preferably because of, I think the sidewalk is right here. Is that right, Bob? That's the edge here?
Yes, this is the curb line here.
This is
So that is the sidewalk.
That's the property line back to sidewalk.
back to sidewalk. I mean, my preference would be is if this is the spot that they have designated, I would like to see a lot more room here being given up to landscape, from this edge of sidewalk to landscape, and not have patrons sitting right here and they're virtually elbow over the walkway passing here. I think that's a bad precedent to have. I mean, that's one of the things I would like to propose, short of having them redesign their whole layout.
Mr. Chair, I see as the entry not being as much of a problem as they're saying, and by some rather minor movements and not a large change of their design, they can still accommodate the entry that we've been asking for since before Fresh and Easy took over this project. We require that entry, and it certainly can be accomplished by some minor adjustments to the interior. And I don't think that we should sacrifice the exterior entryway because of that. I think it's important that the corner tower is is the focal point in the area that most people would see that this is the entry to the store. So they will get out and walk. When we talked about this a long time ago when it was Long's, we talked about how we didn't want this to become a destination where people are going to drive to the back and enter it from the back. And that was one of our original design goals. And we're getting away from that original design goal. And this is a change from this applicant, so I think we need to return it back to where that was.
So this would fall under the study of the original preliminary approval design for style and details specifically regarding the entry tower and how it relates to the entry. That's
For me, the entryway is less of an issue, and I agree, a bit out of our purview with regards to the corridor, even though I think it's a grave mistake. But sticking strictly to our purview, I don't think that the outdoor dining is in a good location. Chris was talking about Whole Foods, and that patio, if it's not being used, it's even on the same side of the building that the entryway is, even though it's a little bit off to the side. And if it's not being used, and this one is not only in the shade, but it's completely on the other side of the building, I think it really won't be used. So I'll stick to that comment, I suppose.
So, Mr. Chair, so in hopes of trying to formulate a motion soon, are we all in agreement that the materials and the colors are satisfactory, or does anybody have a comment that should be in the motion for that?
Yeah, I think in the motion, Dawn's comment on the green of the metal front, I think is a good one, and that we should be looking for a darker color here. This particular green is, I think, is not the best color. Generally, I mean, I am okay with the rest of the proposal color-wise. I think that the wrought iron grill work has to come back to us as a review, and that can come back on consent. But it definitely is not. The present presentation is not really in the realm of what we would prefer to see in either the Spanish Revival, or it could be something very, very simple. It doesn't have to be the Spanish Revival, but this elaborate circular pattern is not what we'd like to see. So that, the green metalwork to the front.
Mr. Chair, what letter green is that on the color board, so we can make a point of reference for the
M
motion?
on one side, and
it should be M.
Yes, Arcadia Antique Patina. Yep. I think the other for me is the light standards. I believe the light standards are 16 feet at the Mesa, and this particular parking lot is right adjacent to residential areas, which the Mesa is not. And I think that the Mesa lights standards are actually pretty tall for the neighborhood. Now, if I am right, I think that the Mesa was 16 feet tall, and I could be wrong, but I would prefer to see something that's at least 2 feet shorter than that. And that's my view.
So 14 to 16 feet?
I would go for 14 feet. I think 16 feet is too high when you're right next to residential neighborhood. I mean, when we first reviewed this project, the neighbors around actually, they came out in force to say that they had issues with being backing up too.
Okay, and then also to have a light shield.
And to have a light shield.
I think it's a full cutout fixture. I don't know what you mean by a light shield.
Okay.
So, what do you mean by?
We can do a
light shield?
cutoff. Usually we would do a cutoff fixture, but we can also add a light shield on the back so there's no light spillage onto the residential.
We would just make that stipulation in the minutes, so there would be.
So is that 16-foot max, or is it?
I'd say 14 feet max,
14,
unless you can.
okay.
That's my.
That includes the base.
Includes the base from the from the ground.
Okay.
So we have those three things, and sorry, yes, go Bob.
Just one question regarding the outdoor seating area. If Fresh and Easy determines that this isn't essential to their business operation,
Yes.
is this expendable at this point in order to better achieve what the board's looking for with regard to the corner
I
entrance?
think so. I think so.
Just
Then in that case, then I think some benches could be incorporated, somewhere, because
okay. I'm just basically referring back to the original preliminary approval had no outdoor seating area.
Right.
We had, wall at the back of sidewalk and wall at the back of sidewalk. Granted, we may not want to move that wall back out, but we could simply landscape that and not have access to it an issue with regard to this approval. Obviously this may be something that is an issue, but if this is not something that's essential to the project, if we were to come back in 2 weeks without that, would the board have a problem with that?
I wouldn't have a problem as long as the landscaping height-wise
Sure.
was enough to modulate that elevation, because the trellis does do that to some extent, but I would let you.
I wouldn't have a problem either, but I still think that it's a missed opportunity not having dining on Milpas.
I feel kind of strongly about that.
Okay, but I think Bob understands where we're coming from. So we'd like to have then that something on the outdoor seating in the in a proposal. I'm seeing that you're taking notes, so I'm thinking that this would be the fourth one, the fourth item, and then
The roses.
the roses would be the fifth.
Oh, but that wouldn't apply if we took the trellis off. So
Well, we have discussed how we would handle the roses if the trellis remains.
that's right.
So if that's acceptable, I'd like to stay
And then
with
the
that.
light standard.
So we have this is the fourth then. So we have the wrought iron work, we have the green metal work. What was the third one?
Light standard height.
Light standard was the third one. And now the outdoor seating. So
What was the comment about the outdoor seating? How was it stated?
we didn't state yet.
We didn't state
We
it.
just know that it is an issue, and I'd say study the outdoor seating for having for either relocating to a more appropriate location, and or having increased landscaping opportunities up against the sidewalk on that north elevation. And then you guys under discussion can. And then the last item I think we should have is the main entry, and I think that the board should state their concern that the main entry is not going to serve as the main entry that the board envisioned this was going to be when this project was initially envisioned. And then we can use stronger language from there. See fit. You want to start them? Go with those five, or Gary, you have heavy thoughts. You want?
Well, I was kind of hoping a little stronger language on the entry.
Would you like to propose something? I mean, it's totally.
Well, I would say that we would want the entry to return as a strong statement for Milpas Gutierrez Corner, and that it be centrally located within that entry tower element. And also that the entry on the parking lot side should not equal the tower. I mean, this is kind of something that I threw out last time too, but I don't think that the entry to the
rail?
to the parking lot area should be diminutive towards the entry of the corner. So, and I did mention
You
that
mean you
last
don't
time.
think that the parking lot entry should be stronger than the entry at the corner?
I do not think it should be stronger, and right now it's equivalent.
Right, and that actually was one of the key points that was brought up years ago when the proposal came.
It is.
Was that this was to be the primary tower element and entry, and that this was to take a more diminutive scale.
Okay.
And so we'd like it to return to that type of that architecture. And I think that Gary's wording is right, but would like to say that this would return to its prominence, not only in its architecture, but in its use as a primary entrance.
Okay.
Okay, so that would be, you want to then, do we have all those already? Or, so do we have the 5 items?
I had another comment about. We don't even have a maker of the motion, and we're under discussion actually.
Okay,
so somebody should actually.
Let's make the motion, and because we need to actually go home and have.
Gary made the motion.
Football game on right now.
Carol seconded it.
So Gary made the motion. Carol seconded it. We have
under discussion. One more item was that I think it might not apply anymore, but I didn't necessarily like the shape of the awning, the round kind of. I think just restudy the
arch canopy,
the shape of the canopy at the rear entrance.
Okay.
So that would. Did you get that, Kathy? Restudy the shape of the awning over the rear entrance.
So we have it's 5 or 6 items, right?
I don't know. I forgot.
And actually,
we have the wrought iron.
I think Carol had a good point earlier about if the outdoor seating goes away, that we should give something back to the community and have some sort of benches in that area, as well as landscaping.
Can somebody read, Kathy, can you read back the portion about the trellis and the outdoor dining again?
I have the outdoor seating. Study the outdoor seating to either relocate to a more appropriate location or provide increased landscaping and benches.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table.
So we have a first, and we have the 5 we have 5 items. I guess the wrought iron, the color of the metalwork, the glazing, the aluminum metalwork, the light fixtures. Number 3. Number 4 is the eating area. It's outdoor seating, and 5 is the entry. And I would like to, under discussion, add number 6. This door here on the outside elevation, which faces Milper Street, is a very service-looking doorway, and I'd like you to study trying to make this doorway not necessarily announce itself that it's a usable door, but it does not look so service-like. Right now, it looks like your back door that you would see at any, and this faces the street. So this would be the pair of doors facing Milper Street in front of the access ramp.
We do actually have this fairly heavily screened with some planting in this area as well, so not sure what else we could do there other than screen that with landscaping.
That would help.
Make it a wooden door.
Yeah, that might help.
A wooden door?
Yeah. Okay, so those 6 items.
Okay, all in favor?
All those in favor of the motion as say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Sorry that was a little torturous.
I totally thought you were going to get out earlier there.
And with that, I'd like to end the ABR meeting for today. Thank you and good night, Santa Barbara. Thanks for being with us, Bob.
Always a pleasure.